An unknown character, with a heart full of pain, curses Melissa, exclaiming with rage in his voice. Tension can be felt in his every emotion. He is breathing heavily, full of despair and hatred. His words are filled with anger. He wishes for Melissa to be cursed. Melissa responds with cold-blooded certainty. She reminds him that he has repeated his curses more than once, but she is still alive and well. She then calmly orders her servant to open the cage in which the captive languishes. The servant immediately agrees, obeying the order. As he approaches, a shout is heard, "Don't come any closer." But Melissa insists that it won't work that way, as she needs to establish a relationship with him. She slyly reminds him that he is, after all, her husband. Her words are filled with cold calculation and certainty. The captive, overwhelmed with anger, declares that he never recognized the marriage and was forcibly imprisoned. His rage grows. Melissa, with a slight smile, asserts that what has been done cannot be undone. She remains cold-blooded despite his objections. In desperation, the captive cries out that she forced him and entangled him with her charms. But Melissa calmly demands that he specify exactly what she made him do. The heat continues when he calls her shameless, but she ignores his insult and gives him the good news. She informs him that the captive's fiancé has found the entrance to the witch's forest and plans to attack her today to free him. The unknown character, looking into the darkness, declares that he hasn't killed anyone in a long time. There is a cold indifference in his voice. He says he would gladly bring the head of his rival, waiting for a response. His eyes shine with cruelty, and he is clearly determined. Base screams for her not to be touched. His voice shaking with fear and rage, he protects her at all costs. Melissa coldly notes that it wasn't a question, but an order. Then demands a kiss from Base, not tolerating rejection. Base replies in disgust that her presence makes him nauseous. The words are filled with hatred and disgust. He pulls away from Melissa, but she moves closer, leaning in to kiss him. Tension builds in the air. Somewhere far away, an unknown girl suddenly cries out in surprise. She is holding a cell phone and is clearly shaken by the events. She complains that the story is developing at the most interesting moment. Her words are full of annoyance. She is caught up in the plot. The girl comments that the protagonist will soon come to rescue her fiancé. She is worried about the development of events. She recalls that she is now reading the manhwa Don't Make the Princess Angry, immersed in a world of fantasy and romance. In the story, a young Prince Base is sent to a hostile country. His goal is to ask for the hand of the princess for peace. However, along the way, he is kidnapped by the witch Melissa. She forces him to become her husband using her dark magic. To save her beloved, the protagonist gathers an army and goes against the witches. Her determination is unwavering despite the danger. But when she arrives, it turns out that Melissa has already tortured Base to death. All that remains is his cold corpse. Wanting to avenge her fiancé's death, the heroine, with the help of her allies, decides to destroy Melissa and all the witches. Suddenly someone shouts, "Look out," in the night, sounding a warning. Someone is clearly trying to avert disaster. The unknown girl looks ahead and, gripped by anxiety, whispers, "Oh no." She clearly realizes that something has gone wrong. The phone falls from her hands, smashing to the ground, and you can see cracks and blood splatters all around. She thinks of death. Everything around her is immersed in a magical atmosphere. Someone shouts that it's witch's magic and everyone is trapped. A voice demands to protect His Highness Base, causing everyone around to rush to the prince's aid. The tension builds. She wonders if Prince Base is the fiancé of the main character from the Don't Make the Princess Angry title. The words are filled with wonder. The screams are reminiscent of the time Melissa kidnapped the prince. Memories roll in, overwhelming the senses. The girl's heart beats too fast, so hard she feels pain. She takes a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. She opens her eyes, whispering "ah" with surprise. An image appears in front of her, making her think. After gathering her thoughts, the girl asks herself if she was hit by a car, feeling distinctly perplexed. She notices that she is alive, and her face lights up with a mixture of joy and surprise. The reality seems unbelievable. The girl looks around, asking herself where she is. Her voice is full of bewilderment and slight fear. A young man appears in front of her, asking if she wants him to be her husband. His gaze is serious. The girl looks around in confusion, wondering who said those words. The question hangs in the air. The one who asked the question appears in front of her. His eyes are serious and a light shines around him. She looks around in surprise and wonders where the handsome boy came from. Her thoughts are steeped in curiosity and slight confusion. She feels that his face seems familiar. Memories rush through her mind, trying to connect the young man's image to something from her past. When the realization comes to her, she exclaims that it is base hand as a young man. She realizes that he was the one who was tormented. The girl, wondering who she is now, feels a slight panic. Doubts about her own identity begin to fill her mind. Prince Base turns to her, Melissa, reminding her of his offer to be her husband. He asks if that's what she really wants. Confused and worried, Melissa admits that she may indeed be the main villain. Her thoughts are full of anxiety and contradiction. She cries out how she can be bullied in this way. Her outrage reaches a climax, overwhelming her words with emotion. The thought arises in her mind that this is the end of it all. She realizes that she has somehow ended up in a book. Melissa thinks that by kidnapping the main character's fiancé, she is doomed. This thought makes her feel fearful. She asks herself what has changed in her behavior, why her actions have become so unpredictable. Melissa had said in the past with a soft voice that as long as he was with her, no one could bother them. His words sounding confident. He didn't expect to be resurrected and find himself as AZ in the moment when Melissa kidnapped him. Melissa, trying to gather her thoughts, whispers to herself not to panic. She tries to find a way out of the situation. She decides to just apologize and let the prince go, hoping it will save her. A ray of hope appears in her mind. Gathering her courage, Melissa asks the prince to listen to her. Her voice sounds cautious, as if she is afraid of making the wrong move. She ponders that in order to save herself, she needs to stay away from the protagonist's fiancé. It is the only way to avoid a terrible fate. Prince Base says that he agrees to become her husband. You can hear the determination and confidence in his words, evoking conflicting emotions in Melissa. His voice turns stern as he promises himself to make her life worse than death if Melissa tries to change anything. The story is set in a vast magical world full of fantasy. In this world, three main regions stand out, each with its own uniqueness. In the east is the Salamnia Empire, a country known for its beauty and grandeur. In the central part is the Enchanted Forest. The west belongs to the Kadhirian Empire, a powerful nation. The borders between the two empires have long been a place of constant struggle. For hundreds of years, there has been an endless war between the two empires. It brings misery to ordinary people. Meanwhile, the power of witches continues to grow as the two nations destroy each other. This increases the influence of dark forces in the world. The two great nations, in an effort to stop the bloodshed, decide to temporarily set aside their differences. They resort to political marriage. This union was supposed to bring the long-awaited peace. However, events began to unfold quite differently than they had planned. The charming witch Melissa intervenes right during the wedding procession. Her intervention changes everything, turning the plot upside down. She kidnaps the crown prince as he was on his way to the Salamnian Empire. Prince Base finds himself at the center of this magical plan. Melissa realizes that she is now the wicked and seductive witch that legends speak of. She feels mixed emotions. Soon she will be wanted by both empires and the heroes will be after her. Thoughts of the possible consequences unsettle her. Melissa decides she will not let that happen. She is determined to change her fate and escape the dangers. Prince Base looks at Melissa with bewilderment. He asks what she is going to do to the soldiers and asks her to spare them. Melissa assures him that she won't hurt anyone. She promises that she will let him go, hoping that he will forget everything that happened. She wonders if there is any way to salvage the plot and get it back on the right track. Her thoughts are filled with doubt. The prince is perplexed as to why Melissa is acting so strangely. He suspects that her true intentions may be much deeper. Prince Base lowers his gaze, his face expressing doubt. He recalls that Melissa used to stop at nothing to get her way. This unsettles him. His thoughts are filled with suspicion. He tries to understand what Melissa is up to now, for her actions have always been full of guile and calculation, Melissa watches Base. She thinks about how he sees her. Her eyes burn with determination, but there is anxiety slipping into them. She remembers how she used to use all sorts of tricks before. Now her thoughts are occupied with avoiding the fatal mistakes of the past. Base is surprised by her words, sensing she is lying. He believes that her mouth is full of deceit. He finds it hard to believe her intentions. She wonders why he's keeping quiet. Melissa wonders if Base wants revenge on her. Her thoughts are filled with doubt. Melissa worries about her future. She thinks about why she can't be a heroine but is forced to remain a villain. Tears stream down her face. She has a hard time accepting that fate is playing against her again, forcing her to be the enemy. Base quietly utters why Melissa is chasing him away. His words are full of pain and regret. He hopes to hear an answer, but he wonders if she doesn't love him anymore. Her love was so strong that she kidnapped him from under the crown. Base can't believe Melissa is willing to let him go. He's sure she's been planning this for a long time and won't give up so easily. He begs her not to leave him. Base confesses that he doesn't want a marriage of convenience, his heart longs to be by her side. Melissa wonders in her heart. She sees how sweet Base was when he was younger, and the thought makes her feel tender. According to the original plot, after Melissa tarnished Base's purity, he became sullen and cruel. He suffered from Stockholm Syndrome, hated her, but could not free himself from this vice. It was leading him to his doom. Base thought about the possibility that Melissa might let him go. But the thought that he was still her hostage kept him on his toes. Melissa is plagued by troubling thoughts. She can't believe that reading the manhwa has caused her to become a dark sorceress herself. It seems like a real nightmare to her. Base turns to Melissa at this point. He asks that she release him from his shackles as he is in pain from his imprisonment. Melissa looks at Base. He looks so defenseless and sweet. She can't help her impure thoughts. Her heart fills with mixed feelings. She calls herself a sinner, for she can't resist his innocent beauty. When Base calls her sis, Melissa begins to lose control of herself. She is overwhelmed with tenderness and joy at these words. Melissa admits that she is about to take off her shackles. She thinks she has been so caught up in her worries that she has completely forgotten about it. Base looks at Melissa fondly and thanks her. He tells her that she is kind, that her actions make him admire her. Melissa thinks about Base's possible revenge. She fears that once she frees him, he will want to settle the score. Melissa decides to use her knowledge. She knows that Base can feign humility to then attack her. She asks Base if he would mind if she cast a spell on him. Base marvels at her question. Melissa suddenly leans over to Base and kisses him. The gesture makes his heart beat faster. He doesn't realize what is happening. Base is shocked by her actions. He thinks this woman is allowing herself too much. Her shameless behavior embarrasses him. Base looks at Melissa and feels his emotions building up. He realizes that the woman across from him has left her damning stigma on him once again. With their feet so close together, Base feels the effects of her magic. She has left a seal that binds their hearts together. This seal isn't just a symbol. She is the shackles that bind their lives together. Melissa relishes the feeling of control, for this bond robs Base of his freedom. Existing under the influence of this magic is agonizing. He who is branded is bound to the caster forever. All feelings, all pain will be shared. However, despite this, the caster himself remains unharmed. All wounds received by the person with the seal have no effect on the one who imposed it. Base recalls that Melissa used this spell in her previous life. She used it after being bitten. Now Base would do anything for her, but she did it anyway. He ponders her actions. He is ready to offer her his hand and heart, but she still resorts to spells as if she doesn't trust him. In anger, Base decides that this time will be different. Where before he tolerated, now he intends to fight for his freedom. Base cannot contain his anger and pain. He swears he will tear her to pieces this time if she continues to play with his feelings. For Melissa, this kiss is special. She can't believe it's her first experience of its kind. She struggles to hide her emotions. With Base free, Melissa thinks she has the situation under control. She tells him that he is now free, not realizing what thoughts are actually swarming in his head. Base is surprised by her words. He has no intention of just walking away without getting justice. He is ready to fight for his right to be free. Breaking the seal of the heart, Base knows, requires the sincere love of the caster. He doubts Melissa is capable of such deep feelings. Nevertheless, Base is determined. If this stigma leads to doom, he is willing to accept his fate and die with her. He looks at Melissa fondly and tells her that she is now responsible for him. After all, that kiss was the first time in his life. Melissa is perplexed by his words. She wants to set him free, and he's talking about marriage. It seems excessive to her. She feels cheated. Melissa admits with irritation that this turn of events makes her angry. She didn't expect this response from Base. He asks a direct question if she's really against it. Melissa looks at him, trying to understand what is driving his actions. Base, turning to Melissa, remarks that she must have a lot of men. He is sure that others know better than he does how to please her. Scenes appear before Base's eyes where Melissa is surrounded by men who are caring for her. Base doesn't hide his disappointment at the implication. Melissa hastily denies his words. She says that she doesn't really have anyone and has never even been in such a relationship. Melissa admits that she has been single for 24 years and had never been kissed until recently. She is clearly embarrassed to bring this up. Base asks with interest if Melissa agrees to marry him. His eyes shine with hope and you can hear the confidence in his voice. Melissa is stunned by such a question. Her gaze is full of surprise and slight confusion. She had not expected this turn of events. Base assures Melissa that he will be a good and faithful husband to her. His words sound sincere and warm, and he looks her straight in the eye. But Base's thoughts are not so simple. There is a flicker of menace in his eyes. Inside, he is plotting revenge on Melissa, harboring a grudge and planning his revenge. The witch forest can be seen in the distance. Someone notices Melissa, wondering who the boy next to her is. They recognize Base. The people in the forest are whispering, discussing the rumors. One of them says that Melissa's appetite keeps getting bigger and bigger, which only adds to her popularity. Base laughs, noticing that everyone is just talking about Melissa. He emphasizes how popular she is, but there is sarcasm in his words. Rumors are flying around. They claim that Melissa is obsessed with men, preferring everyone, indiscriminately, from young to old. Melissa reflects on what is happening. She remembers the plot of the manhwa she read. In the original, Base hated her, but now things have changed. Her thought of the manhwa plot makes her wonder. She wonders why Base is so attached to her, contrary to the plot. Melissa realizes that before she can return Base to the protagonist, she must take good care of him to avoid a tragic ending. Leading the dialogue in the forest draws attention to a witch's forest shrouded in mystery. People say that the sun god was born here. Because of the sun god, countless treasures are hidden in the forest. Legends of the witch forest are intertwined with magic, creating a mysterious halo. Amidst the treasures, the story of people's greed comes to mind. They wanted to own these riches, calling witches a dark force that threatened the purity of the sun god. Melissa realizes that this place looks different than she expected. The events and rumors here seem so vivid and alive. Base is immersed in his thoughts. He remembers the last time Melissa treated him like a dog, kicking him outside. The people around him were discussing him just as they were now. Their conversations remained the same, bringing up all the same topics as before. A feeling of blindness remained in Base's memory. He could hear all the discussions, but couldn't see anything around him, as if in a fog. Opening his eyes, Base suddenly realizes that he is in a cage. He realizes that this cage will be his prison until his death. Base's thoughts focus on Melissa. He swears to himself that this time will be different, that he will not allow himself to be humiliated. In the distance, he sees Melissa. She walks towards him, holding out her hand. Her eyes read alarm and she warns him of danger. Base suddenly loses his balance, not realizing what is happening. He hears a warning about careless flying that could bring tears to loved ones. A scene plays out in front of him. The witch, apologizing, says she only recently got her license to fly, clearly feeling uncomfortable. Base realizes that Melissa has just saved him. This realization causes him to have conflicting emotions mixed with gratitude. Melissa wonders if everything is okay. You can hear the concern in her voice, and she makes it clear that his safety is important. Base thinks about Melissa's words. He realizes that if something were to happen to him, the protagonist would not let it go without consequences. Base wonders to himself who is in front of him. He can't believe what is happening, feeling very confused. Melissa, also surprised, reflects on her past. He can't understand how her former, selfish nature could have changed. Thoughts rush through his mind. Base asks himself if she used to be able to protect others the way she is now. He looks at her, not recognizing her as her old self. Her gestures and actions seem strangely sincere to him, raising many questions. Base asks himself who this person in front of him is. He tries to figure out what exactly has changed in their relationship. Base and Melissa stand holding hands. Base realizes in surprise that this is the first time he has ever held a man's hand. This causes him excitement and embarrassment. Melissa looks at Base, and her facial expression seems familiar to him. In his mind, he calls her a perpetual loner as he ponders her behavior. Base wonders why Melissa has become so shy since his rebirth. Her shyness surprises him, as she used to be so different. Melissa continues to hold his hand, thinking to herself that her heart flutters at his touch. This feeling is new to her, and it makes her nervous. She asks, slightly embarrassed, what he just asked her. He watches her, noting that only Melissa could look at him like that. Melissa asks why Base has gone silent. She wants to understand what's going on in his mind. Her voice sounds soft, almost anxious. Base smiles, saying he just wants to go home, holding hands with her. His sentence sounds calm, but there is a lot of emotion lurking in it. Melissa notices how gently he holds her hand. His words that they can go home together bring a smile to her face and warms her heart. When Base kisses Melissa's hand, she looks at him in surprise. The gesture awakens a wave of unexpected feelings in her. Melissa can't believe her eyes and mentally wonders what this guy is doing. She feels her heart start to beat faster. Melissa leads Base down the hallways. She tells him that as long as he is a guest in the Witch Forest, he is perfectly safe and free to leave at any time. Melissa asks him not to believe any bad rumors about her that may be spreading. She smiles, trying to convince him of her sincerity. Opening the door, Melissa asserts that the rumors about her alleged promiscuous liaisons are untrue. She insists that she is not that kind of person at all. She invites Base to come inside, her gestures full of sincerity. Base looks at her with slight bewilderment, but follows her in. Later, the girl thanks Melissa for taking care of her fiancé, calling her a kind witch. He sincerely recognizes her kindness and hospitality. Melissa embarrassedly accepts the thanks, replying that it is her duty as an honest person. She feels pride and joy at these words. Melissa realizes that her reputation among the other witches is improving. She feels a surge of happiness, her eyes filling with tears of joy and emotion. Melissa confesses that she wants to change the course of the story by taking a bold step. She invites Base to her home, assuring her that her house is very large and welcoming. Melissa tells Base that he is the first man she has ever invited to her house. These words cause him embarrassment and trepidation, and Melissa smiles. Suddenly, a man with earrings, a collar, and a bell appears. His appearance is unexpected by everyone, especially Base, who looks at the scene with confusion. The words "mistress," "mistress" resound through the air as Melissa tries to figure out what's going on. She is stunned by the scene and feels slightly confused. Melissa's friends welcome her back, surrounding her with joyful shouts and smiles. Their eyes glow with genuine affection and joy at her return. One of the men, winking, sends an air kiss, which shocks Base. His exclamation of "what the hell" reflects his confusion and incomprehension. Melissa explains to Base with a smile that she had specially prepared this greeting for his arrival. She asks if he enjoyed the show. Base, still dumbfounded, only agrees with a strained smile. He doesn't realize how many men surround Melissa, and it bothers him. Melissa laughs, assuring Base that since he enjoyed it, she'll let the performers go soon. She promises to pay them and let them go home. Base, slightly annoyed, thinks about how many other men surround Melissa besides him. His heart fills with jealousy. Base remembers Melissa saying she loved only him. Now he doubts her words and ponders her sincerity. Base decides that he will gradually repay Melissa for all her actions. He senses that the time for his retaliation will soon come. Melissa, sitting on her throne, announces that she doesn't care how the men got here. She is focused on the current moment. She declares that as of today, all men are free. These words sound decisive, like a promise of change. Melissa reflects that in order to survive, she needs to get rid of the label of promiscuous. It is important for her to change her perception in the eyes of others. She realizes that she cannot allow Base and others to see her in that light. These thoughts lead her to take decisive action. The young man decisively declares that he will not leave his mistress. He looks at Melissa with devotion and confidence, as if the whole world revolves around her. Seth doubts whether Melissa needs him now that she has a new lover. His gaze is full of sadness and a slight envy of Base. Another man in the room decides he'll stay by Melissa's side, too. There is a look of determination on his face, as if he would do anything for her. The third man bows to the ground in despair and begs Melissa not to send him away. He's willing to accept any fate just to stay close to her. Melissa's eyes fill with tears and she sighs as she watches the sincerity of these men devoted to her. She had not expected such a reaction from her servants. In her thoughts, Melissa recalls that these men are her lovers. However, in fact, they are not just lovers, but her round-the-clock housekeepers. One of the men, whose name is Seth, is only 18 years old. He was nearly dead when Melissa rescued him from the slave market, and is now grateful to her. Melissa has become the whole world to Seth. She has replaced his family and his home. He admires and adores her, considering Melissa the most important part of his life. Another guy, named Saren, with a soft voice and fair skin. He is 19 years old and was originally a singing eunuch in the church choir. Siren, like Seth, found his salvation in Melissa. For him, she became not just a mistress, but a true guardian angel protecting his destiny. Seth, overwhelmed with gratitude, recalls that the cruel nobles were unable to take him away. Melissa saved him when she heard him singing, and he has been devoted to her ever since. Despite her reputation as a villain, Melissa remains a savior in the eyes of her servants. To them, she is like a goddess, offering protection and care. They admire her. Melissa is desperate as her servants do not want to leave her. They declare that they cannot survive without her. All of this causes her tears and confusion. Melissa thinks about what she should do with such loyalty. She is confused and bewildered. Sighing, she smiles as she prepares to explain the situation. With a smile, Melissa introduces Seth Base. She assures him that until he gets settled in, Seth and Serene will accompany him. Base listens to her attentively. Serene tells Base that she and Seth will be guarding him. They are willing to do all his bidding. Melissa is confident that they will help Base adapt. Melissa, enjoying her cunning, calls herself a genius for sending these walking nuisances to keep an eye on Base. She is pleased with her ingenuity. Base suspects that Melissa has put servants on him to keep an eye on him. He thinks she is cunning and devious, but thanks her for her concern. Melissa is alarmed to hear her name spoken by an unknown voice. She tries to figure out who is calling her and realizes that the voice sounds dark and mysterious. The voice continues to speak, accusing Melissa of killing Base. She denies the accusation, frightened by the dark thoughts that have filled her mind. Her voice trembles. Melissa screams in panic that she didn't kill Base. Her eyes fill with tears and conflicting emotions rage inside. She struggles to maintain control. Suddenly the door opens and two guards enter the room. Melissa feels a chill roll down her spine and realizes something is wrong. The guards' words confirm her fears. They are here to take her to the dungeon. Melissa screams no, realizing that events are moving quickly. She wakes up, breathing heavily, realizing that it was all just a nightmare. Sweat covers her forehead and her heart is racing. Melissa, lying on the bed, tries to calm her breathing. She convinces herself that it was all just a dream, but the anxiety still lingers. Her body still feels tense, as if she really was being stalked. She looks around, slowly coming to her senses. Suddenly someone touches her arm. Melissa wonders with surprise and fear who is in front of her, her eyes full of questions. A voice gently reassures her that everything is fine. Base, holding onto her hand, says with a warm smile that it's him. Melissa looks in surprise at Base, who is standing in front of her. She exclaims his name, her voice full of bewilderment and joy mixed with a tinge of shock. She is confused. Her eyes express all her emotions. There is only one question in her mind: how did he end up here, in her room, so suddenly? Melissa tries to figure out what Base is doing next to her. After all, she had specifically assigned him a separate room and left Seth and Siren guarding the doors. Melissa ponders how he was able to get past his guards and come here. It seems almost impossible to her, but Base is here, close by. Base gently calls Melissa mistress, confessing that he's afraid of the dark and doesn't want to sleep alone. His plea sounds sincere. Melissa asks why he hasn't called Seth and Siren for help. After all, they are always there to protect him, to be there for him, especially at night. But Base says he doesn't need Seth and Siren. He assures her that he only needs her presence, only her closeness can calm him down. Melissa is inwardly surprised by such affection. She jokingly ponders that such behavior on Base's part is almost illegal, and that her heart can't take this kind of excitement. Base, hugging Melissa, begs her to let him stay. He says he wants to sleep next to her, being protected and cared for by her. Melissa is lost in thought, her heart beating faster. She asks Base not to continue, warning him that she won't sleep with him for his own good. She earnestly tells him that such intimacy should not be allowed. Her eyes are full of determination and excitement as she tries to explain that this is wrong. Melissa, with feigned severity, warns Base that if she can't hold back, she might eat him. She laughs, implying her weakness to his charms. Melissa's thoughts flicker to the idea that one should not underestimate the single girl's determination and determination. Base listens to her, gazing intently into her eyes. Melissa reminds Base that there are certain differences between a man and a woman. She advises him to go back to his room before it's too late. But Base, not embarrassed, reminds Melissa that they are husband and wife. He thinks it's okay for them to sleep together, and you can see the sincerity in his eyes. Melissa objects, stating that it's not normal. She reminds Base that she never forced him to become her husband. On the contrary, he is pursuing her. Her thoughts return to the Manhwa storyline where things were different. Melissa wonders if her presence could have created a butterfly effect, changing reality. In the Manhwa, it was Base's death that gave the heroine the determination to get revenge. The princess was helped by the protagonist, whom she eventually fell in love with. Things are different now. Melissa ponders how her path will change now that Base is alive. She's not sure what the protagonist will avenge now and how she'll meet the hero. Base remembers the past with gentle insistence. He notices that Melissa used to not let anyone into her bedroom and wonders what has changed. A suggestion flashes through his mind: could Melissa have chosen him simply out of sympathy, or is there something more behind it? He plans to bribe her. He asks Melissa to let him stay, promising to fulfill her every wish. With those words, he embraces her, hoping for a response, for intimacy. He realizes he cannot reject the man who has come to her doorstep on his own. A cry for help resounds in her head, but words fail to come out. She decides to give in, but on one condition. Melissa asks Base if he is willing to grant her any wish, whatever it may be. Base smiles and confirms that he is ready to grant her wish. His eyes glow with tenderness as he looks at her, pulling her closer to him. Melissa feels her heart sink. She knows their relationship has changed forever. Everything is happening too fast, but she can't resist. Base notices that Melissa has finally shown her true colors. He is ready to sacrifice himself, but is surprised it happens so soon and unexpectedly. The room is dusk, with silence all around, broken only by the faint light from the window. Melissa says her condition is as follows, and Base listens to her intently. Melissa, looking directly into Base's eyes, explains that in a month's time, they will take the entrance test for Balit's military academy together. She waits for his response. Base, a little surprised, asks if the whole condition comes down to just that, and not even having to take off their clothes? He clearly expected more than that. Melissa looks at Base with a soft smile and asks if he agrees to her proposal. She eagerly awaits his decision, hoping for an answer. Base, hesitating slightly, agrees. He notes how strongly Melissa has expressed her desire and is ready to fulfill her request no matter what. The image of Melissa, stern and determined, pops up in Base's mind. Up to this point he has been an obedient boy, but now a new world has opened up before him. Melissa rejoices at his agreement, saying that now he can sleep in peace. There is tenderness in her voice, she feels confident around him. Base, lying next to Melissa, cannot believe what is happening. He asks himself if this is all a dream and can't find an answer. He ponders how Melissa stopped so easily and worries about her health. It occurs to him that she may have overexerted herself, losing her strength. Base remembers being cut off from the world in his past life. It was incomprehensible to him what was happening outside the cage he was in. Now a new path is opening up before him and he is ready to follow Melissa as he learns about the world and himself. Base recalls that the last time he heard about Billet Academy from Melissa was when they were talking about his fiancée. It turned out she had fallen in love with a commoner from Billet. Base's memories are full of pain. He recalls how someone once told him that only he would love him forever. Those words, like chains, bind his soul. He thinks about how he wishes Melissa would torture his flesh instead of gradually eating away at his soul. Such thoughts bring him misery. Base wonders why Melissa wants to enroll specifically in Billet Academy. There is clearly more to her decision than he can assume. Melissa replies that he will find out in time. Her words sound enigmatic and her gaze becomes mysterious, creating an aura of understatement. Base continues to ponder. He finds it strange that Melissa is thinking of joining the academy. It all seems like some part of a bigger plan. In this world, only the Billet Military Academy and the Witch Forest are not under the control of any country. These places have become symbols of freedom. The academy even provided a safe haven for Melissa when she was on the run. It was a time of change that influenced their future actions. But the most important thing for Melissa is that now the main character, Edwin Foster, is there. His presence plays a key role in her plans. Melissa is determined to find Edwin before he meets the protagonist. She knows that this meeting could change a lot of things. A month passes and they approach Nathan Island, which is 100 nautical miles away. Their journey approaches an important milestone. Melissa exclaims that Nathan Island is in front of them. She rejoices as she anticipates meeting new challenges and opportunities on this island. She encourages the others to look at the island sooner rather than later. Her cheerful attitude is transmitted to everyone and an atmosphere of adventure is in the air. She, seeing her companions suffering from seasickness, asks if they are all right. Her concern is evident in her tone. Melissa, a little surprised, remarks that she didn't expect all three to be seasick. This adds an element of surprise to the situation. Base exclaims that his is fine after all. He thinks that Melissa purposely dragged him this far to make fun of his condition. Base tries to pull himself together and assures Melissa that he's doing fine. His voice sounds calm, but there is a note of tension, as if he is trying to hide weakness. Seth asks Melissa how much longer they have to sail. His words sound tired, and he clearly hopes the journey will end soon. Saren wonders if anything is hurting them. She asks caringly, but there is a confidence in her voice that everything will be fine. Melissa confesses that she really likes the cool sea breeze. With a slight smile, she enjoys the moment, feeling the freshness all around her. Seth resents Melissa for choosing someone weak. His jealousy flares up and he can't understand what she found in someone who seems insignificant to him. Seth notices that the ship has stopped. He's worried, as it's a long way from Billet's Academy, and there's no telling why they're no longer moving forward. Melissa also wonders what happened. Her concern is transmitted to those around her, and she stares intently at the captain, waiting for an answer. The captain apologizes to the passengers, explaining that the waters ahead are under the control of the Billet Military Academy. He says the ship can go no further. Melissa is puzzled. She realizes that she already has to take her entrance exams tomorrow, and tardiness is unacceptable. Worry overwhelms her. The captain regretfully explains that students who wish to take the entrance exams have always had to rely on their own abilities. It's part of their tests. Melissa, undaunted, realizes that action must be taken. She decides that the swimmers must be the first to make their way to the academy. One of the passengers offers to swim first. He is sure that if they fail this test, how will they be able to pass the certification? Base says anxiously that he can't swim. His confession sounds scared and he looks at Melissa, hoping for her support and help. Base speculates about how Melissa will cope with 3 darlings around her neck. It seems incredible to him that she would be able to pull them all alone. Suddenly, Base realizes that he himself has included himself on the list of freeloaders as well. He's a little embarrassed and tries to deal with his excitement by assuring himself to stay calm. Melissa promises Base not to worry. She says that as long as she's around, he can just lie there and not move, trusting her strength completely. Melissa is confident in herself. She knew going to the academy would be a challenge. But being prudent, Melissa had prepared for it in advance. With a smile, Melissa takes the blackboard and tells Base to watch and study. Her determination is impressive and she is enthusiastic. Melissa is ready to catch the wave. She admits that she talks like a schoolgirl, but that doesn't embarrass her at all. Joyful laughter is heard in her words, adding to the energy of the moment. Base is surprised and a little concerned. He wonders if Melissa really hopes to make it to shore on that little board. Seth offers his idea: lay everyone down on a board and hope the current and wind will carry them to shore. But the problem is that it's low tide. Saren remarks about the tide, realizing that Seth's idea won't help. Seth, a little confused, wonders what to do next, waiting for instructions. Melissa reassures them, saying she has a better way. With her confidence and determination, everyone has hope for success. Base cautiously asks Melissa if she is going to use magic. He worries, because using magic might give her away as a witch. Base ponders why Melissa is so eager to get into Ballet Academy. His thoughts are filled with curiosity as he tries to understand her intentions. Down below, the board touches the water gently. There is something romantic about this moment, like the beginning of a new adventure that will change everything for them. Melissa smilingly asks everyone to enjoy her performance. She winks, creating intrigue as if promising the audience something special, something exciting and impressive. With grace she dives into the water, her body being swallowed by the wave. Melissa feels in her element, like a fish, free and at ease. She marvels that surfers are able to conquer even parallel worlds. They can't believe how easily Melissa handles the waves. The people on the ship point at Melissa, amazed at her skill. They wonder if it is magic that helps her glide through the water so easily. Melissa stands on a plank, showing off her amazing skills. Seth and Base are in awe, unable to believe how gracefully and easily she maneuvers. Seth exclaims that it's amazing, can't figure out how Melissa does it. Base, watching, shares his amazement, pride glowing in his eyes. Melissa, confident, promises to borrow a boat on the island and return for her companions. She is determined to help them. Seth and Base, watching her, admiringly confirm that they have all seen Melissa's skill. They are proud of their mistress and her courage. Saren offers to offer prayers for Melissa's success. His devotion is noticeable, he wants everything to go smoothly and safely. Melissa inwardly comments on her companions. She considers them two loyal but stupid dogs, and admits that she doesn't think their beauty is special. As she leaves, Melissa asks the boys to wait for her return. She is confident in her abilities and is not going to leave them in trouble, hoping for a speedy reunion. Base thinks about the upcoming test at Ballet Academy, how she will pass tomorrow. He thinks about how important it is to keep his identity a secret without revealing his magical abilities. An air of calm and grandeur hangs over Balit's military academy. Tomorrow, the annual entrance exams will be held here, and the atmosphere is filled with anticipation of new, talented students. The teacher in the auditorium tells the students about their tasks in the exam. They will have to pretend to be examiners in order to better understand the true intentions and abilities of the new applicants. The teacher believes that the students' grades will have a huge impact on the candidate's future. These marks will become an important part of the overall assessment of everyone in the examinations. The moment comes when the teacher begins to announce the names of those who will be assisting in the examination. The first name she says is Pandora. Pandora responds in a confident voice. The teacher then calls for Foster, but he does not respond on the spot. She irritably yells at him to bring himself to his senses, for the day is winding down, disturbing the usual calm of the classroom. One of the students exclaims irritably about how loud the teacher is being. He is unhappy about being distracted from his sleep. Foster lazily remarks that he is not deaf and can hear perfectly well. His calmness and indifference to what is happening is noticeable and even admirable. Inside himself, Foster laments that he is bored with lectures. He was the academy's top graduate in the past, and now he is forced to attend the same classes again. Foster reflects on how tedious the extracurricular activities were as well. He feels like he's already tired enough in his past life. Teacher Kaylor angrily reminds Edwin of his privilege. She emphasizes that students from unknown families make great efforts to study at Belita. Kaylor continues to reprimand Edwin, pointing out that he does not appreciate the opportunities given to him. She is displeased with his laziness and disregard for the principal's efforts. Edwin sighs, realizing that he is being reprimanded again. He tiredly tells the teacher that she is wrong in her conclusions about his indifference. Edwin confidently states that he got into ballet not through effort, but solely because of his talent. If the teacher doesn't believe him, he suggests asking the principal. Edwin recalls how he was persuaded to study here. He is unhappy that he was not warned about the difficulties and worries he would face at the academy. Kaylor indignantly warns Edwin that his arrogance will lead to no good. She reminds him that he will be in charge of the inspection tomorrow. With fire in her eyes, Kaylor sternly clarifies in a stern tone whether Edwin understood her words. Edwin obediently agrees, confirming that he is clear and ready to follow instructions. Edwin, watching the strict teacher, ponders what lies ahead tomorrow. He is more interested in whether there will be beautiful girls among the newcomers rather than boring duties. With slight indifference, Edwin decides that he will stop by the harbor after class. He wants to take a look at the new arrivals, to see who has come to the academy. Nathan's harbor is full of movement and life. On the dock, amidst the boats and passers-by, Melissa is delighted to discover that her boat has been borrowed by the uncle of one of the locals. The man next to Melissa offers to tie up the boat on the dock. His calmness and confidence create an atmosphere of ease and trust, as if he is always there for her. Melissa confirms that she has come to participate in tomorrow's exam. She adds that her younger brothers will be arriving with her to accompany and support her. Bass watches Melissa and reflects on her ability to find guides. It seems to him that she easily charms a man and gets a boat for her pretty eyes. Bass decides to himself that Melissa is laughing too soon. He waits for the right moment to get the information he needs and arrange for payback. Determination burns in his eyes. Melissa calls out to Bass, asking if he heard what she said. Her voice sounds cheerful, as if she is confident in her words and knows his attention is on her. Melissa informs him that Mr. Ford is offering them the opportunity to spend the night at his place. She adds that his house is very close to Ballet Academy, which is convenient. Bass, upon hearing this, says incredulously that he heard everything. He finds it odd that they already call each other by their first names, thinking Melissa is too easygoing. Bass thinks Ford doesn't give the impression of being an honest man. However, despite his doubts, he assures himself that Melissa knows what to do with him. The image of Melissa flashes in Bass's imagination. He imagines her seducing Ford, depriving him of his ability to resist. It seems to him that this will happen tonight. The evening comes, filling the atmosphere with lightness. They sit in a cozy place and Ford offers to try a beer he brewed personally, not knowing if they will like it. Melissa is mentally worried, as she is not allowed to drink. She remembers how easily intoxicated she got from one sip and wants to avoid doing it again. The younger brothers cheerfully support the banter by calling their sister a drinker. Melissa feels unsupported and mentally laments that the two aren't helping at all. Melissa, in doubt, says she won't drink, because tomorrow is the exam. She recalls her past experiences and her reluctance to get into awkward situations. Bass, meanwhile, decides that if Melissa gets drunk, she will stop pretending. He's sure he can find out the information he needs if he gets her talking. Bass offers Melissa a drink with him with a smile, reminding her that they've never shared a drink before. He looks at her with hope and warmth. He reflects on how before Melissa used alcohol in lovemaking to make him submissive. Now Bass plans to use her own methods against herself. Melissa ponders how nice Bass is. She realizes that she just can't refuse his request to have a drink with him. Melissa's thoughts become confused. She agrees, but clarifies that she will only drink one mug. Bass looks at her in surprise, and she can see the gratitude in his eyes for this. Melissa takes the mug and begins to drink, tilting her head back. She takes several large sips, feeling the drink fill her with warmth and relaxation. Ford watches this with a slight smile on his lips. He notices that Melissa knows how to drink. His words express his admiration for her ability to hold a punch. Ford continues to ponder that Melissa is not as simple as she seems. He thinks about the fact that perhaps she is an experienced seductress and knows how to control men. Ford decides that if that's the case, it won't be hard to get her attention. His eyes fill with confidence and anticipation, for the game has begun. Melissa happily declares that she has drunk it all down. Bass, Ford and Melissa smile, sharing a moment that seems carefree and happy. Ford notices that Melissa's cheeks are flushed. He wonders if she's okay, leaning closer to see her face. Melissa, drunk on the drink and the atmosphere, suddenly says that Ford is very handsome. Her gaze on him becomes tender, full of sincere admiration. Ford feels that no man can resist such a face. He begins to believe that he has an interesting and exciting evening ahead of him. Melissa says his name softly, as if expecting some kind of response from him. Her eyes glisten and her smile shows how much she is engrossed. At this point, Bass intervenes, suggesting they all hug. Ford agrees, and Melissa gladly reaches out to them, as if needing the warmth. Bass calls out to Melissa, her gaze becoming clouded. He asks Ford to prepare a bedroom for Melissa, explaining that she's had too much to drink and needs to rest. Bass gently holds Melissa, leading her to the bed. He asks for one bedroom to be prepared, turning to Ford, who watches curiously. Ford is surprised by Bass' request for one bedroom, raising an eyebrow and noting that just one bedroom seems like an odd choice. His thoughts are mixed. Ford points to a large room, suggesting that they stay here. He thinks this room is large enough for everyone to be comfortable and cozy. Bass carefully supports Melissa, cautioning her to be careful. His voice sounds soft, showing how much he worries about her. Ford, not hiding his skepticism, asks if they are really brother and sister. His expression becomes thoughtful, trying to understand their relationship. Irritation flickers in his thoughts, because there are no attractive girls at Byleth Academy, and just an opportunity for flirting, as doubts suddenly arise. Bass, without losing his temper, says that they don't have to report to Ford. His voice is full of determination, showing that he is ready to protect his sister. Melissa and Bass are lying on the bed, next to each other. Melissa holds Bass' hand tightly and he looks at her fondly. Ford realizes that things here are not as simple as they seem. He decides to leave the situation as it is and forget about it, shrugging his shoulders. He chuckles, contemplating how interesting the situation is. One girl and 3 men, it clearly brings an element of intrigue to their company. Bass leaves the room, hearing Melissa complaining about the heat. Her quiet voice shows fatigue and vulnerability, and he turns to her. He calls out to her, trying to see if she's okay. His voice is full of concern and slight worry for her condition. Melissa lies in a relaxed pose, complaining about the tightness of her clothes. She asks Bass to help take it off, showing her vulnerability and desire for comfort around him. Bass, looking at Melissa, suddenly exclaims that there is no way he can do that. A determination mixed with anxiety can be heard in his voice. With a strained expression on his face, Bass calls Melissa's name, assuring her that he is there for her. His voice sounds confident, trying to calm her anxious state. He reflects that now that they are alone, it is unclear to him what she intends to do. Her mysterious behavior makes him suspicious. Bass admits to himself that in all the time he has spent with Melissa, she has not even laid a finger on him. This seems suspicious to him and raises internal doubts. Melissa laughs softly, whispering that she can finally touch him. She confesses that she has always thought he was very handsome and now she wants to express her feelings. Melissa adds that she is sorry that in a past life he died so early. She says this with longing, showing that his loss has touched her deeply. Bass hears Melissa ask if he fell in love with her because of her looks. The question sounds playful, but with a note of doubt in her voice. He thinks about the fact that in a past life Melissa had been quick to lose interest in other men, but with him she was unexpectedly reserved and gentle. His thoughts return to the question of the reasons for her previous behavior. He now doubts that her feelings were based on looks alone. He finds this strange. She replies with a smile that she didn't want to kidnap him at all. Her words are full of sincerity, trying to convey her true affection. Melissa laughs happily, saying that her kidnapping was Melissa from the manhwa. She confidently assures Base of her sincerity. Base is shocked by her confession. He wonders if someone could have made her do such a thing, wondering who could have ordered her to do it. His thoughts turn to the fact that someone was controlling a woman as crazy as Melissa. He suspects there is something more behind the kidnapping. Melissa, feeling tired, says she wants to sleep, her eyes closing. She clearly needs rest and comfort after her experience. Base is alarmed. He asks Melissa to stay awake and to name the person who ordered her to kidnap him. His voice is full of impatience and anxiety. Melissa, already on the verge of sleep, quietly replies that she wants to sleep and asks Base not to make any noise. She turns around and tries to sleep. Base looks at her, wondering if she is really drunk. He is concerned about her condition and her strange speech. His thoughts return to the fact that Melissa's behavior in this life is so different from her behavior in her past life. He tries to understand the reasons for this change. Base realizes that Melissa didn't just kidnap him because of her desires. Now he begins to suspect that there is something more behind her actions. He asks himself who is really behind it all. His gaze is focused on the sleeping Melissa. He is lost in speculation. Suddenly Melissa asks in her sleep not to kill her and asks for help. Her quiet voice sounds anxious. She is clearly frightened by something. Base wonders if she is having nightmares. He decides not to interfere and let her rest until he finds out the truth of what is going on. He concludes that he will let her live until he finds out who is behind the whole conspiracy. His determination is clear in his eyes. In the distance, there is a beautiful view of the city with cozy houses and streets. The atmosphere seems festive, with flags flying everywhere, creating a sense of celebration and anticipation. Someone says he is from the royal lineage of Philadelphia. This person adds that his father is the Duc de Sade, emphasizing his noble origins and influence. Base observes what is happening and ponders. He realizes that the descendants of nobles from all over the world have gathered here, and only the Byleth Academy has been able to unite them. Base also notes that these people are often in political confrontation. At this point, it seems that the Byleth Academy plays an important role in their lives. Melissa, in the company of others, wonders, did all these people come for a chance at admission? She can hear the surprise in her voice at the number of applicants. She notices that the level of competition is too high. Her thoughts become tense, realizing that getting into the academy will not be easy. It will take a lot of effort. Seth, standing nearby, adds that the mistress shouldn't have much trouble. He says this confidently, cheering her on and boosting her morale. The other man reminds Seth that he should call her sister here. He explains that only family members are allowed into the academy, adhering to strict rules. Mr. Fora, holding up his ID, says he has registered Miss Melissa. He holds out the ID to her and his face lights up with a welcoming smile. Melissa apologizes to Mr. Fora for bothering her, trying to be polite. Base notes to himself that the locals are being checked in without a line, marveling at that fact. For reassures Melissa, saying that he, too, will be going through the trials with them. He clearly wants to lend his support for the upcoming trials. In response, Base thinks that clingy guy is here too, his thoughts full of surprise and annoyance. He doesn't like his continued presence. The group moves forward on their way through the dark forest. They know that they must pass through this forest to reach Byleth, overcoming a challenge. One of the attendants explains that the academy uses these thickets to screen candidates. Those who make it through the forest will be able to pass the pre-screening. Melissa, listening to the explanation, notices that it all sounds suspiciously simple. The thought of possible difficulties ahead flashes through her mind. Base smiles, telling her that she shouldn't worry. He is convinced that together, as a team, they can overcome any difficulties that come their way. Base watches Melissa and wonders why she is so eager to get into Byleth Academy. It occurs to him that there may be someone on the inside behind her. He ponders having to help Melissa with her admission. This may bring him closer to the truth, to unraveling the mystery behind her actions. At that time, For promises Melissa that he will protect her. He says confidently that she can rely on him. His words sound reassuring. For thinks that a show of force at the right moment is a great move to impress. He says this, trying to look confident and important. Base, for his part, decides that once they enter the forest, he will have to get rid of 4. He doesn't like the man's presence around him. Melissa smiles, saying that 4 is very kind. His attention and care calms her down a bit, despite the surrounding tension and uncertainty. However, she is also immersed in her thoughts about the plot of the manhwa. She recalls how the main character Lena learned of the attack on her fiancé and led the troops. Melissa remembers that Lena's fleet was caught in a storm and nailed to Nathan Island. This event was pivotal in her fate, as was meeting the protagonist. Melissa decides to intervene in the events before they begin. If she can intercept the initiative, she can change the plot and save her life. Base notices that Melissa is looking at him as prey. He's lost in speculation as to what she's up to this time. The look in her eyes alarms him. The man chides the girl for her ingratitude. He thinks she should appreciate his help more and not be so cold. His tone becomes reproachful. Not far away, the man says that his offer to team up is a chance. He promises that if the girl becomes obedient, she will pass the exam. For observes this scene and thinks about how every year at enrollment there are always such insolent people. He is annoyed, but he holds back his emotions. For invites Melissa to come with him. He thinks that the administration will take action anyway and there is no point in interfering. Flirting with girls is much more pleasant, he admits. The man next to him is silent, as if thinking about something important. His silence is taken as a sign of agreement, and his companion wonders if he really agrees with the proposal. The girl irritably tells the man to remove his hands, warning him of the consequences. Her eyes glitter with fury and her threat sounds serious and confident, making her even more determined. In another part of the garden, 4 and Melissa are discussing what's going on. She wonders what the fight is about. 4 explains that every year the nobles gather and conflicts are inevitable. He adds that there aren't many female officers at the academy because it's harder for them to pass the various certifications. Base smiles, noting that the lady clearly needs help. He ponders that this is a good excuse to get rid of 4 and stop his pestering of Melissa. He denies his jealousy, claiming that he just doesn't like 4. Meanwhile, the girl throws the man away, yelling that she asked him not to touch her. She does so forcefully, showing her strength and independence. Melissa watches. Lena stands nearby, holding the man on the ground. He complains of pain and her gaze is stern and unwavering. Lena's name rings in Melissa's mind and she is amazed by her actions. She is perplexed as to why Lena, the protagonist of the manhwa, has shown up now. Her thoughts are full of doubts and questions that she doesn't know the answers to yet. The protagonist of the manga is puzzled as to how the main character Lena could appear at this time and place. He feels confusion and tension from the unexpectedness of the situation. The woman silently observes the man who seems suspicious to her. She demands that he wait. The woman irritably accuses the man of cowardice, revealing that he is afraid of something or someone. Her condemnation sounds distinct but not resentful. Her maid happily announces that she has finally found her. The maid's face shows excitement, but also relief at the reunion. The maid kneels before the king, reporting that His Majesty would be extremely concerned if he knew of her misbehavior. She is clearly frightened and regrets what has happened. The maid reverently asks Her Majesty to return home with her. She hopes for mercy and clearly wants to avoid trouble. The woman assures her maid that even if she escapes, the wedding will still not take place. She says this with a smile, showing that she is sure she is right. The maid wonders why the wedding will not take place, clearly not understanding the situation. She is waiting for an answer that can reassure her. The woman, smiling, explains that her future husband is a real scoundrel. She says this calmly and even with a certain amount of pleasure, as if she is not too bothered by it. Lena admits that she still can't believe what is happening. She realizes that she is a queen from a fictional story. The image reflects her connection to another person, their figures frozen against a gloomy interior. Lena continues to reflect that she, as a queen, in order to save her loved ones from an evil witch, has begun a series of attempts and actions. Against the backdrop of a dark cage with heavy chains, the tension and danger is palpable. Despite her best efforts, she realizes that she has failed to save an important person. Lena notes that the war between the two empires has erupted with renewed vigor and many lives have been lost. Lena mentions that she had to make difficult decisions in the process of pursuing the insidious witch Melissa. She does this while surrounded by two men who seem to support her. The next scene shows the heroine sitting on a horse with a hero named Base. A romantic atmosphere surrounds them, as if they are immersed in a special feeling. Their journey together continues, giving the impression of harmony. Lena reflects on her life, envisioning it as a smoothly flowing plot filled with joy and well-being. She realizes that all her actions and experiences are only part of a fictional scenario that is carefully crafted. She disagrees with the prescribed fate and firmly resolves to confront it. In her quest to avoid the predicted marriage, Lena resolutely runs away as she ponders her next steps. Lena concludes that only by changing her predetermined life path can she influence her future. She is determined to break boundaries so that life can change. Upon reflection, Lena concludes that Bayliot Academy is not the main setting of her story. She believes that here she has a chance to take control and be more active. To her surprise, the main character from her story is also at the academy. In a slight reverie, Lena speculates that there may be other people in this fictional world who, like her, have realized their situation. She is determined to find out who they are and form an alliance with them to change the course of events. A character named Base addresses the girl, calling her sister. He looks puzzled and admits that the suddenness of what is happening has stunned him, rendering him speechless. Base assumes that their help is not needed and suggests that his sister leave. She agrees to go with him. At this point, Lena reflects that a character named for has never met her in the manga, and so the main Lena doesn't hold a grudge or even recognize her yet. For is surprised to notice that another beautiful girl has appeared. He doesn't hide his admiration, but he thinks that this stranger has a complicated character, which he says with a thoughtful look. For decides to stop admiring her looks and instead encourages himself to use more effective ways to get girls' attention. He clearly shifts from an emotional response to a strategic approach. The maid calls out to the girl, addressing her respectfully as an older sister. Lena, hearing her, responds, with a look of mild surprise on her face at the sudden address. A small boy appears, holding a teddy bear. He asks if Lena is participating in the entrance exam. Lena smilingly answers in the affirmative, asking how she can help. The boy enthusiastically states that he saw Lena easily handle her opponent and admires her strength. He looks genuinely impressed, and Lena smiles at his words. Lena questions his participation in the exam again, slightly surprised at his age. She thinks about how such a young child could be allowed to participate in a difficult test. The boy admits that he wouldn't have wanted to, but his father insisted on it. Lena finds him cute and can't hide her smile. The atmosphere around him softens at this scene. Lena reassures the boy, telling him that he shouldn't be afraid. She promises to help him if any difficulties arise. The boy thanks her, feeling more confident in her presence. The boy's eyes light up, however, and he thinks about how Four will have to choose whose woman will win, his or for himself. He is determined to win this time, which is evident by the determined look on his face. Lena stands in front of a group of wolves, who look at her warily and are clearly hesitant to attack. She is calm and confident, creating an air of authority over the situation. The maid is surprised to admire the heroine's strength and notices that she is completely calm and confident. There are onlookers standing around, watching this scene with amazement. Lena remembers that she is a princess of the Sferiland Empire and holds the first place among the noble girls. She realizes her influence and knows that her status is admired by those around her. She thinks about the fact that her life is controlled by more powerful forces, perhaps puppeteers from high society, who are pulling the strings and controlling her destiny, putting her in front of difficult choices. Lena feels that her participation in this game of fate is the result of political intrigue by a king who is trying to strengthen his alliance with other countries. She realizes that her personal feelings and desires are being ignored. Among the audience, someone comments on the girl's strength to handle a wolf pack and wonders how she did it. A boy with a teddy bear agrees that Lena is strong and can easily defend herself. The people around them discuss the heroine, noticing her amazing physical fitness and abilities. They assume that such a girl can definitely succeed if she enters the academy. Melissa realizes that something important is happening and feels that she should be ready for any surprises. She decides not to make any more mistakes and to remain vigilant in this challenging environment. Base feels he must take control of the situation before Melissa can make her move and win the favor of the right people. He realizes that the chances of success are tied to determination and precise action. There is a crow sitting in a tree watching what is happening. She is probably playing the role of a spy, reporting the events at the academy to those who wish to keep the situation under control. In the training room, a group of professors are discussing that the new set of students seem to be quite interesting. One of the teachers, Andre Lanz, believes that a girl with fighting abilities could be a worthy candidate for their academy. Andre claims that with a talented candidate like this girl, the academy will be able to strengthen its position. He says this with confidence, as if he sees her as more than just a powerhouse. Another faculty member, Ed Helborn, expresses skepticism about Andre's confidence. He reminds that many candidates may not live up to expectations and one should not jump to conclusions. The head of the academy, James Calvin, smiles demurely and urges the faculty not to argue. He emphasizes the importance of observation and patience before drawing final conclusions. James assigns Andre the task of administering the final tests to the incoming students. He emphasizes that this is an important assignment and trusts Andre to complete it. Andre responds in the affirmative, showing his willingness to do the work. Andre points out the importance of making sure everything goes according to plan and reminds them that the selection process is serious. He warns his colleagues that there may come a time when they will have to make serious decisions for the good of the academy. Finally, Ed apparently disagrees with Andre's plans, expressing mild irritation. He jokingly offers to come out and discuss their differences in a more active way, reminding them of his determination and intransigence. Lena looks up at the building in surprise, recognizing it as Bailey Academy. She is amazed at how easily she was able to get in. Her face shows pride in her abilities, and she even mentally thanks fate for such good fortune. Base and Lena turn their attention to Fora, who is trying to draw attention to himself. Base looks at him suspiciously, not understanding his intentions. The man informs her that he has news and suggests that they will have to part for a while. Lena reacts with surprise at his words, wondering what has happened to Fora. She is clearly concerned that he has decided to leave at such an important time. Her eyes express uncertainty and worry. Base reassures his sister that Fora probably has his reasons for this decision and offers to confide in him. Lena, though she remains on guard, realizes that Base is right and agrees to leave the situation without interference. Fora recalls that despite his reluctance to leave, his duty demands that he do so. He jokes to himself as he imagines what his leaving will look like. His thoughts are centered on the events to come, and he looks for ways to do it elegantly. A boy with a teddy bear, asking if these people are really newcomers like him. Fora comments that the newcomer's appearance only emphasizes their weakness, and notices the lack of real strength. Lena notices Melissa approaching and suddenly feels unprepared. She is confused, wondering how it is that they met at this moment. Her anxiety is evident in the expression on her face. Melissa recognizes the main character and is surprised by her presence here. She is clearly puzzled by this coincidence and is trying to figure out how she can best react to this situation. Lena calms herself down, thinking that she's changed now and is not the same person she used to be. She is confident that she can fool Melissa into thinking that her changed demeanor and mannerisms are hiding her true intentions. Lena recognizes Base and expresses her concern. She thinks back to the man who has caused her a lot of trouble in the past and feels her body tense up at the memory. Lena notices that Base is starting to sweat and asks if he's sick. Base assures her that he's fine, explaining that he's just a little hot. However, his look betrays an underlying concern. Base offers his sister to wipe the sweat from her face. He carefully touches her forehead despite her protests, trying to show that he cares for her and is ready to support her in any situation. Lena watches this with surprise and slight jealousy. She ponders how she should act in response to Base's attention to the other girl. Her thoughts show her scrutinizing his every move. Lena ponders that Base called Melissa sister, but did he really mean someone else? She wonders about his real intentions and ponders how sincere his words are. For, being around the boy, thinks that the learning process this year will be especially challenging. He realizes that the newcomers to the academy are going to show their best sides and prove their superiority. The boy, holding a teddy bear, confidently declares that they are sure to prove their superiority this year. He proudly speaks of his confidence and belief in their future success. For, slightly nervous, remarks to himself that so far their confidence doesn't seem serious. His thoughts emphasize that the real test is ahead and he will have to monitor the situation carefully. For smiles and jokes that he'll try to wait and see what happens next. The boy with the teddy bear agrees with him, expressing his approval. Base asks For if he is indeed a student of Scarf Academy. Lena stands nearby, watching the conversation closely, suspecting that For's name might be fake. She wonders why he is trying to approach their group. For turns to Melissa, apologizing for his deception. He explains that his goal is to find talented people and invite them to join the academy. Lena listens carefully to his words, realizing that For was trying to use his false name to gain trust. Base expresses doubt about the veracity of For's words. He believes that as the son of a noble, For does not give the impression of a man of high status, pointing out his lack of insignia and manners. Melissa comments in a whisper that the name Base sounds too much like the name of the manga's protagonist. She begins to wonder if there is something behind this coincidence, and her suspicions grow stronger. Lena is surprised to notice that For is wearing a patch over one eye. She recalls that the main character of the manga didn't have such a patch, and this discovery leaves her perplexed and with even more questions. For apologizes, removing the patch from his eye. He admits with a smile that he doesn't actually have any injuries, and the patch is just part of his image. Respectfully, he turns to Melissa, apologizing for his behavior. He hopes that she can forgive him for his deception and won't be angry. Lena, meanwhile, is surprised to realize that For is the character who was her lover in the manga. Base whispers that Melissa is too stubborn to ever forgive such deceptions. Melissa, on the other hand, laughs, brushing off the situation and stating that she won't get angry over such petty things. Her cheerful mood emphasizes that she's not taking what happened seriously. Lena comments that For has caused them a lot of trouble during their journey. She hints that his main goal is to get closer to the protagonist. Base, slightly embarrassed by his sister's words, asks her if she's not used to saying what she thinks. For cautions everyone that their conversations could lead to misunderstandings. He asks them not to jump to conclusions and states that they are all here for temporary reasons. Lena notes to herself that she finds the situation confusing, especially when it comes to their relationship with Melissa. Suddenly, someone draws attention to a person approaching. It turns out to be a female instructor, Edla Kavan, who greets the students and expresses her joy at the large number of new faces who have passed the entrance tests. Melissa is surprised to notice Edla Kavan and comments that her presence at the academy speaks to her importance. She mentions with admiration that Edla is the only female instructor at the academy, and her support can make a big difference in their success. Melissa explains that according to the plot of the manga, Edla Kavan is an important figure for all students who dream big. Base thinks back to the unpleasant things Melissa has done in the past, and his thoughts begin to bother him. He wonders why exactly now it has come up in his mind and feels fear clench his heart. Base decides that he can't afford to succumb to her influence. After all, his main goal is to get into the academy. Melissa notices that Base looks worried and asks him if everything is okay, as his face is flushed. Base assures her that everything is fine, brushing off her concern. A confused Base assures Melissa that he's just overheated and that he's in no danger. Melissa continues to watch him suspiciously as he tries to hold himself steady. A boy with a teddy bear standing nearby expresses disappointment that Hellborn will not be the examiner. He was clearly hoping to see him here, but now he'll have to accept that fact. Lena thinks to herself as she remembers the details of the entrance exam. Only those who manage to hold the nameplates until the end of the test will be able to enter the academy. She ponders that they have an uphill struggle ahead of them. The entrance examiner announces the conditions: each will receive a nameplate, and for the next hour they will have to defend it against the others. Only the top 50 will get a coveted spot in the academy. Lena leans over to the boy and reassures him, promising him that he will definitely do well and get into the academy. Her confidence and calmness give him strength. The boy with the teddy bear thanks the heroine for her support, but still doubts who she is. Lena just smiles, keeping her thoughts to herself. Lena greets the boy with a smile, saying that they are happy to see such a strong newcomer among their own. She invites him to join them and shows her support. The boy expresses his admiration and gratefully accepts the invitation, feeling part of the team. He prepares for the challenges ahead, feeling confident in his abilities. Lena reflects to herself that, according to the original story, she should have been lower in rank and only joined their academy by coincidence. She decides that in this world she must take fate into her own hands and change the outcome of the story. Lena thinks that if she wants to change her fate, she can't let the manga storyline control her life. She is determined to change the future and control her destiny. Some of the people present express anxiety as they think about how they will be able to protect their plaques. They worry that they don't have enough skills to successfully pass the test. Melissa reassures them, assuring them that she will make it to the end. She says she won't give up until she reaches her goal. Someone nearby prays for her success and promises to cheer her on from the bleachers. Melissa smiles and thanks everyone for their support. She thinks to herself how lucky she is to surround herself with such caring and sweet friends. They reply to her that she can always count on them. Base smiles and says that he too has registered for the trial. He says he can protect Melissa now. Melissa notices that Base is too confident and expresses her displeasure. Base curiously asks when he became her bodyguard. Melissa says that despite his weakness, he always tries to protect her, and she appreciates him for that. Base confirms that he always thinks ahead to avoid trouble. He is grateful to Melissa for her care and support. For, noticing their conversation, asks if they are really ignoring him so much. He sarcastically says that he too took part in the trial and can defend Melissa. This annoys Base. Meanwhile, Lena approaches them, along with a boy and his teddy bear. Lena greets them, noting that they have met again. The boy looks a little surprised. One of the contestants, upon seeing the heroine, says with a chuckle that they have met again. He arrogantly asks her to give him the nameplate and humiliate herself in front of him, promising to keep her alive. Lena replies with a slight chuckle that his threats seem too flippant and he hasn't learned any lessons from the past. The boy with the teddy bear asks who the man is, to which Lena replies that he's just trash. The challenger, angered by her words, reminds her that he is a prince of a neighboring kingdom. He points out his high position and demands respect. Lena calmly replies that his kingdom has long been trying to destabilize her empire, and the authorities are already taking action. She is not afraid of his threats and is confident in her defense. The prince expresses surprise at her bravery and assures her that her defiant behavior will only bring her trouble. His smug face shows that he is confident in his power. Melissa ironically notes that the prince's appearance leaves much to be desired, hinting at his ugliness. She laughs, noting that even a normal person like her can't find anything attractive about him. Melissa and Lena stand side by side, watching the scene. Melissa expresses surprise as she recognizes a familiar figure among those gathered. Lena also notices it and wonders why she is helping them. A boy with a teddy bear addresses Foru, telling him that he shouldn't try anything with Lena because he won't get her. For, smiling confidently, replies that he's not worried, and he won't make any devious plans. For reflects on the fact that Melissa is always there for Lena and realizes that she will be an obstacle in his way. He ponders why he feels so strange. Melissa, approaching Lena, declares that she wants to team up with her. She assumes that the two of them can defeat the men and accomplish their goals. Melissa assures her that they are both strong women and if they work together, they can accomplish a lot. Lena gladly agrees, excited about Melissa's proposal. She confesses that it is a great fortune to have such a strong ally. Melissa notices a group of men nearby looking at her with interest. She mockingly notes that they probably want to join in, and that gives her confidence. Base watches Melissa and thinks to himself that her self-confidence sometimes exceeds reasonable limits. He still doubts her actions, but can't help but admire her confidence. Lena agrees that this is a good opportunity to find out the truth about the woman in front of them. She reiterates her willingness to look into the situation. For makes a sarcastic remark about how the fight for the heroine's attention has become a competition. The boy with the bear expresses concern, noting that the fight could end badly. Base notes that they need to proceed with caution and warns against unnecessary violence. Lena, noticing the tension, suggests they calm down and resolve the matter peacefully. Melissa agrees with the heroine's suggestion and says that they are willing to surrender and give up the signs if it will end the conflict. Melissa demands that the man not only hand over the plaque, but also apologize to Lena. The man indignantly reminds her that he's a prince and doesn't have to apologize. Melissa coldly suggested that he think about what his country would prefer, a public apology or a loss of reputation. The prince astonishingly agrees to apologize and bends down to say the words of apology. He looks startled and realizes that arguing with Melissa is futile. Melissa chuckles, saying she should have apologized right away. For stands nearby, observing the situation, and jokes that maybe this was Melissa's way of keeping order. For expresses his admiration for Melissa's ability to cope. He jokingly notes that Melissa seems too brave to be just a court lady. For smilingly thanks Melissa for her intervention, while Lena wistfully thinks that she would have had a hard time coping without Melissa. Melissa, discussing the situation with Lena, points out the importance of support between women. She notices that after what happened, no one dares to attack them anymore. Lena smiles and introduces herself as Lena, expressing her joy at knowing Melissa. Melissa thinks to herself that she likes Lena's boldness and that she looks like a strong ally. She reflects that by joining forces with Lena, they will be able to accomplish their goals. Lena thanks Melissa for her support, noting that an alliance with her will bring many benefits. Melissa hopes that their alliance will be long and successful. Melissa and Lena smile at each other, feeling that they have found in each other a trusted ally. Melissa places a reassuring hand on Lena's shoulder, promising to be there for her. For approaches Melissa and Lena, asking for their help in dealing with the remaining issues. Melissa promises to support him in this. Base approaches Melissa to join their group. Melissa cheerfully says that their team can't be defeated now. For supports Melissa, reassuring her and telling her that she looks beautiful. Melissa smilingly thinks that For does remind her of a puppy and then, jokingly admiring his bravery, puts her hand on his head. Seeing Melissa petting Base, the character thinks about how she wishes she could take that hand away and forbid anyone from touching Melissa. The students welcome a new student to the academy, expressing their readiness to accept her into their ranks. One of the students suggests choosing the most appropriate path and making an informed decision. The boy with the teddy bear in his hand smiles and expresses doubt, believing that no one can take away his role. He continues to watch the events unfold. Melissa decisively announces her choice, stating that she has decided to join the Refined Academy. She thinks her destiny will tie her to the main line. Base immediately declares that if Melissa joins the Refined Academy, he will go there too. Another character also agrees and says he will go with Melissa. Base suddenly remembers that he was here to investigate, not to follow Melissa. He looks slightly embarrassed by his earlier statement. Lena turns to Melissa, noting that they will now be classmates. Melissa smiles and says she's happy about that. Melissa, introducing herself to Lena, emphasizes that despite their outward differences, she feels they will have a mutual understanding. She welcomes Lena to the academy. It is announced that the time for choosing an academy has come to an end. The students holding the sign should come to the assembly area immediately. The teacher from the academy begins keeping track of the students, announcing that all students who have successfully passed the entrance test are invited to the assembly. In the hall, the instructor congratulates the students who successfully passed the tests and says that they can now choose from several academies such as Martial Arts Academy, Refined Academy, and Tactics Academy. The two students immediately announce that they want to join the Academy of Tactics, loudly expressing their desire. For turns to the group of students with a smile, implying that their academy will lose again this year. Melissa stands nearby, watching the scene. The boy holds his teddy bear and reminds her that it's not the quantity but the quality of students accepted that matters. He looks confident. Melissa and Lena are walking together when the boy enthusiastically says that Lena has joined the Refined Academy and that their academy has now won. Melissa thinks back to her past life and realizes that her role has always been about battles, despite its importance in strategic planning. She notices that Lena's role in the original story was different. Melissa wonders if the connection to the original storyline is still there and has doubts about the changes due to her decisions. Base looks at Melissa and wonders why her face suddenly became so serious when it came to joining the Tactics Academy. He is concerned about her reaction. Base decides to find out if Melissa has any secrets she's keeping from him, and vows that he won't let her plans come to fruition if they conflict with his intentions. The teacher announces that the Tactics Academy has attracted the most students this year, and asks a representative of the academy to give a speech. For tells himself that he can't run away from his role in the academy, and sees it as an inevitable part of his life. Melissa reflects on the fact that she is always noticed no matter where she is, and that she attracts attention with her presence. Base calls out to Melissa, wondering why she is always watching other men. Melissa is perplexed as to the reason for his question. Base declares that he will protect Melissa and be her rock-solid support. Melissa smiles as she senses his loyalty and concern. Base says with confidence that he will one day kill Melissa with his own hands. He thinks that changing the storyline was the wisest decision, because he didn't realize how much he hated her in this life. For announces that all newly arrived students need to move into the dorms, where they will begin 7 days of preparation for the new school year. Melissa ponders that this preparation will be similar to army training. Melissa thinks that she has a chance to use these 7 days to strengthen her relationship with the main line, while simultaneously severing her ties with 4 and thus completely changing the plot. Base approaches Melissa and suggests that they live in the same dormitory since they belong to the same family. Melissa is outraged by this suggestion. Melissa reminds Base that he is a boy and he should live in the boys' dormitory. For insists that he is used to sleeping next to her and enjoying her scent. Melissa, unable to stand it, asks For not to say such romantic nonsense. She does it loud enough for everyone around to hear. Melissa, embarrassed, covers her mouth with her hand, but she is overwhelmed by her love for him. Melissa rebukes him again. Lina approaches Melissa and suggests they be roommates since they are both newly arrived students. Melissa smiles and agrees. For suddenly appears nearby and explains that he'll have his own room, but he's willing to help if needed. For angrily asks him why he's using his powers to live with them. Base won't let Melissa and Foro get close to each other, and Melissa reflects frustratedly on how she only managed to befriend the main Lina. Now fate brings her back together with the main character and Linnea. Lina looks at Melissa with disbelief, and Melissa assures her that she's not trying to steal men away from her. She just wants to live with Lina and asks the protagonist to believe in her sincerity. Melissa agrees and asks Lina to take care of her. Lina rejoices, thinking that if Melissa does turn out to be the original Wicked Witch, she will never let Lina be alone with Base so the plot doesn't go canon. Melissa finds herself in the Bettel dorm looking at the beautiful building. She notes that the living conditions here are much better than what she had at the university. Inside the room, Melissa marvels at its spaciousness and comfort, especially the large bed. She enjoys being able to enjoy the birdsong every day. Melissa suddenly notices that there are only 3 beds in the room, even though there are 4 of them, and 1 man among them. She tries to understand why this arrangement is logical. Realizing that she has managed to stay away from Lina, Melissa thinks about how she will keep a safe distance from Base. But now she worries that they may have to sleep together again. Melissa imagines a possible scenario in which she and 4 end up in the same bed again, which makes her feel uneasy and anxious. Lina jokingly threatens Melissa, saying she will destroy her as an evil witch. Melissa thinks about the fact that the main Lina lives nearby and she needs to be careful that she doesn't get killed for sleeping in the same bed as Base. Melissa fearfully ponders the consequences if Lina finds out about her nightly visits. She fears it could lead to her death. For suddenly interrupts her thoughts by announcing that he's already put on his new school uniform. Base wonders if the uniform looks good on him. Melissa genuinely admires his appearance, inwardly noting how seductive his new look is. She thinks about how the school uniform gives him even more charm. Base approaches Melissa and tells her that the bed she's sitting on will be theirs to share. He adds that it looks very comfortable. Melissa mentally agrees that it would indeed be more comfortable to sleep alone. Base assures Melissa that he will go to the principal and ask for a private room so she can rest. Melissa responds by asking him not to do that. Base replies that he just wants to live with her. He takes Melissa into his arms. Melissa reflects on the fact that once she enters the academy, she will have to make contact with the main Lena to avoid problems. Base at this point thinks that he will watch Melissa's every move to find out the truth as soon as possible. Melissa feels trapped and is perplexed as to how to deal with Base's insistence. Base hugs Melissa, wondering what happened. Melissa notices that Base has the top button on his school uniform unbuttoned. Melissa tells Base to button the button and Base asks her to help him with it. Melissa thinks to herself that Base is being childish and grudgingly agrees to help. Base asks Melissa to put more effort into it, but she notices that the buttonhole is too small for the button to fit through. Lena watches suspiciously, puzzled as to what Melissa and Base are doing. She begins to think that Melissa is trying to possess her fiancé by taking over his heart and body. Lena imagines Melissa wrapping Base in restraints, not letting go until he dies of exhaustion. She decides that this time she will help Base avoid that outcome. For suddenly asks Lena what she's doing in this place. Lena quickly excuses herself that she was just passing by and heard strange noises coming from the room, but she wasn't eavesdropping. For pretends he didn't hear anything, but Lena insists that she heard noises and asks to check what's going on inside. For agrees and offers to go inside to sort things out. They open the door. Lena is excited at the opportunity to catch Melissa and thwart her plans for Base. At that moment, an academy employee approaches them, wondering if they are looking for Melissa. The employee confirms that they heard strange noises and asks if Melissa is inside. Lena calls out to Melissa, trying to figure out what's going on. Melissa doubts they will believe her if she says she was helping Base button up. Lena finds the situation amusing. Lena, turning to Melissa, expressed her concern that having men and women living in the same room might be uncomfortable. She suggested that Base move into her room so they could live together. She figured that if Melissa wanted to hurt Base, Lena could intervene in time. Base indignantly rejected Lena's offer, saying that he had serious insomnia and wouldn't be able to sleep without Melissa. He firmly clung to her, demonstrating that he had no intention of letting anyone separate them. Melissa tried to calm Base down by offering her help. She offered that she would come over every night to lull him to sleep and then return. The thought swirled in Melissa's mind that she wouldn't miss the chance to strengthen her bond with the main Lena. But Base expressed doubts about Melissa's plan. For reminded her that according to the rules of the school, once a room had been assigned, it couldn't be changed. He hinted that Lena would have to accept this state of affairs. The girls asked in surprise if they could make an exception and assign Base a separate room so that men and women could live separately. For pointed out that Base himself had told him that he and Melissa always slept together, so that was how it had been decided to house the students. Melissa was horrified that her lie had come out. Base stepped closer to Melissa and asked with interest if she had really said those words to the principal. Melissa, a little embarrassed, admitted that she was simply telling the truth. The realization of the consequences of her action made her fall to her knees, worrying whether Principal Lena would believe that she was sleeping with her fiancé without losing her honor. For emphasized that all the dorm rooms were already taken and there would be no vacancies until after the training camp. He suggested that they return to talking about any requests after the training period was over. Base figured that if he had to find a room again after training was over, he wouldn't be able to watch Melissa around the clock. He figured he'd have to find a way to stay close by to keep her from escaping his control. Perhaps he should have taken a lesson or two from his sister on how to fool the training facility. The next day, the students gathered for a lecture. The teacher explained that there were 5 levels of masters in alchemy: beginner, intermediate, advanced, high, and highest level. The students listened to him attentively, realizing the importance of each stage of learning. Melissa seemed to be thinking about how best to adapt to the new reality, for even rules as strict as those in this academy could be easily circumvented. The teacher explained that an excellent alchemist could play a crucial role in a battle. He emphasized that high-level alchemists had the ability to transform matter and change the shapes of their tools at will. His lecture was full of knowledge, but Melissa began to yawn with boredom. She thought she had already learned all these attitudes when she read the original. Melissa, tired of lecturing, got bored and decided to take a nap right in class. She was so calm that not even a crow on the window could distract her. Apparently, she had a special ability to pass out in the most unexpected places. The teacher went on to explain that witches' magic required rituals to activate their spells, while alchemists could transfer their energy and manipulate objects directly. Lina, listening to this, exclaimed, marveling at alchemy. She noticed that Melissa only seemed to be sleeping and doing nothing. He found her adorable even in moments of sleep, believing that beautiful faces like hers were good in all situations. Lina, who took up the task with full determination, remembered how in her previous life she had learned how to become a high-level commander. The teacher continued his demonstration, showing how using alchemy, he could change his form. He asked the student known as Finn to show an example. Finn proudly stepped forward, taking his teddy bear with him. He introduced himself to the class, explaining that his real name was Liren. Melissa realized that this was the same student who had been the #1 ranked student at the academy in the original story. That explained why he seemed vaguely familiar to her. The teacher announced that the first test for the newcomers would be to search for alchemical materials in the forests of Mount Grimm. Lina and Liren found themselves on the same team. During the trial, they got lost in a storm and eventually decided to take shelter in a cave to wait out the weather. Liren got sick from the cold and Lina stayed by his side, never leaving his side. This touched Liren, but before he could express his feelings, he died of his illness. 4. Upon learning of Liren's death, thought that it only lessened the number of Melissa's enemies. Melissa reflected that despite her human principles, it was unlikely that she would have been able to save Liren in that situation. She felt that the circumstances were simply against them. The teacher explained to the students that they would be divided into teams and sent into the mountains to search for materials needed to learn alchemy. The teacher announced that the teams would be formed randomly by drawing lots. When Melissa's name was called, she watched with interest to see who else would make her team. Bas assured Melissa that even if they ended up on different teams, he would still switch with someone to be by her side and protect her. Melissa noted with a slight smile that she had enough of his intention, but added that she would never agree to a trade. Bas was amazed at her determination. Lina, watching the conversation, thought about how infatuated Melissa was with Bas and laughed quietly to herself. It seemed to her that this could play into their friendship if things worked out the way they needed to. Lina remembered that Liren was the same man who had died due to illness during the storm in the original story. She decided that if she could influence fate this time, she would try to avoid being on the same team as him. But then a thought crossed her mind: would her own interference cause her teammates to get hurt as well? Doubts grew like clouds on the horizon. Melissa felt a growing unease as she considered all the options. She realized that choosing between her own safety and the safety of the team could be a daunting challenge. Lina met Liren's gaze and hesitated. She realized that she could lose a man if left alone in a dangerous situation. Meanwhile, the teacher announced that the assignments for these 7 days of the training course would be difficult and would require the completion of missions. His words sounded serious and the students listened attentively. The teacher announced that 7 different missions had been prepared to practice their complex skills. He explained that at the end of the course, students would be awarded stars based on their success in completing them. Melissa, immersed in her thoughts, was shocked at how high the requirements were. It became obvious to her that even the slightest mistake could cost her a place in the academy. The teacher added that those who scored less than 2 stars at the end of training would be expelled from the academy. This statement caused outrage among the students. Whispers and discussions started in the classroom. Several students looked upset as they realized what was in store for them. They did not want to be expelled from the prestigious academy. The teacher turned to Liren, putting him in charge of gathering information about the teams. Liren politely agreed, taking on that responsibility. Melissa, worried about her position, quickly raised her hand to ask a question. She wanted to know if security students, such as 4, could participate in the draw. The teacher confirmed that the rules were that guards didn't have to participate, but they were required to accompany the recruits for their safety. Melissa thought that this did leave room for unpredictability after all. 4, who was also concerned, wanted to clarify a few things. The teacher looked at him with interest, waiting for questions. The teacher waited patiently to see what 4 would ask, noticing his raised hand and determined expression. Obviously, the training had raised a lot of questions among the students. Lynette explained that Lima originally belonged to the Alchemy Academy, which meant that those who got on his team would probably get an advantage and earn stars faster. She expressed concern that it might not be fair to the other freshmen. Lina suggested her plan to address this concern and protect all the recruits. She suggested to the teacher that this could be used to prevent Liren and Melissa from teaming up, thus changing the course of the story. The teacher listened carefully to Lina's suggestion and asked her to continue. He seemed interested in her idea, which gave her confidence. Lina suggested splitting the teams by appointing Lame and Four as leaders of the two groups of recruits. She added that the students could choose which team they wanted to join. Lina mentally noted that this decision would allow her to avoid uniting Liren with Melissa and thus avoiding possible deaths among the main characters. She looked pleased with her plan. Melissa listened as Lina continued to discuss her idea, pondering how her actions might affect the outcome of events. Her face reflected determination and seriousness. However, Base disagreed with Lina's proposal. He was concerned that if he and Melissa were assigned to different teams, they might end up on opposite sides of the barricades, increasing the risk of expulsion from the academy. Base emphasized that he was not going to sit idly by. He looked at the teacher with an expression of firm confidence in his decision. The teacher praised the students for their active participation in the discussion from the very first day of training. He invited BAS to express his ideas. Base suggested doing a trial to confirm qualifications for team participation. He explained that some students might be close to family members or friends, and that would help avoid conflict and ensure fair distribution. Melissa listened to Ba with mild surprise. She thought it was the first time she had ever heard BAS speak so formally and confidently. It added to his points in her eyes. The teacher in the class asked if anyone agreed with Ba's proposal. Several students raised their hands expressing their support for his idea. The class gave a friendly cheer to Base's proposal, showing that his idea resonated with many. The teacher seemed satisfied that the students were taking the initiative. The teacher suggested starting the process of drawing lots to assign students to teams, respecting the opinions of everyone present. He raised his hand, calling for order. Melissa and BAS were seated at the table. BAS turned to Melissa, asking why she was looking at him. Melissa assured him with a smile that she just thought he was smart. Melissa mentally rejoiced that she didn't have to confront BAS, or the situation might have gotten more complicated. She was relieved that everything had gone smoothly. The moment of the draw came. A group of students gathered near the teacher to draw their numbers. Melissa walked up to the line, waiting for her turn. Melissa was inwardly pushing her luck, wanting to draw the number that would secure her a team with the main line. She was determined to make an impact. When it was Melissa's turn, she confidently approached the table. Her teacher handed her the draw box and she looked at it carefully. Melissa mentally noted that the teacher looked surprisingly serious. She took the box and pulled the ticket with the number on it. To her relief, she saw that the number on the ticket matched her wish. She smiled, feeling luck on her side. For, standing nearby, invited Melissa to join his team, no matter what number she drew. Melissa thanked him for the invitation, but added that she only intended to work with people who really wanted to succeed. Melissa thought about how she didn't remember there being a toss-up scene in the original storyline. She curiously pondered who she would draw and how it would affect future events. Melissa pulled out her hand with the ticket and looked at it carefully. She eagerly awaited the result, hoping that luck would be on her side. Meanwhile, BAS was thinking with a serious look that no matter who Melissa ended up with on the team, he would not miss the opportunity to watch her and control her actions. His plan was to keep an eye on Melissa at all times. BAS added that once they entered the Zagres Mountains, she would have a chance to meet the Witch Queen, and he wanted to be there to control the situation. His determination was evident. Melissa revealed that she had drawn the ticket with the number 6, and as it turned out, BAS had drawn the same number. They both marveled at the coincidence that their teams matched. It meant that they would be working together. Lena also drew a ticket with the number 6 and was a little puzzled to find herself on the same team as Melissa and BAS. She realized that this could be dangerous. Melissa and Lena, despite their worries, hugged and happily declared each other teammates. They expressed their joy at being on the same team together. At the moment of the draw, Lima suddenly announced that he too had drawn number 6. The surprise of those present was evident as this turn of events seemed unbelievable. For told Basu with a smile that he understood his desire to be on a team with Melissa, but it was impossible for 3 people to draw the same number. Bas was asked to look at the number on his ticket. Bay showed his ticket, which had the number 6 on it, adding that his number was indeed that number. This caused even more amazement to the people around him. 2 female students sitting nearby looked at each other and began to whisper that perhaps their tickets could be repeated as well, which created excitement among the others. For remarked that in such a situation it would be appropriate to conduct a contract test to see who really owned number 6. He looked interested, and the others looked wary. They suggested their idea, noting that such a test would help to clear things up. For supported the suggestion with a smile. Ba confidently promised Melissa that he would definitely protect her, and that they would return from the mission together. He was determined not to part with her. Lina, realizing the plot development, decided that this case gave her an opportunity to get closer to uncovering information about the witches. She was determined to take any chance she could get. The director approached Melissa, inviting her to ask any questions as part of the contract test. Melissa had an idea and was ready to begin the test. Alyssa asked if it was really possible to ask any questions, and the director confirmed that it was possible. She bravely decided to take the test, believing that it would give her the opportunity to reveal important secrets. The director explained that the result of the test would be an indicator of trust and commitment. If the answers varied, it would indicate a lack of trust. Melissa decided it would be an interesting experience. She paused, pondering her next steps, and began to ask her first question. Her question was quite unusual. What gets up earlier than a rooster, sleeps later than a dog, eats more than a pig, and works the hardest? Both quiz takers, Lina and Bas, looked puzzled as they tried to find the correct answer. Lime and Lily stood, clearly puzzled by the question Melissa had asked. Both tried to figure out what was meant, but never seemed to have heard of such a creature. Melissa, feeling confident in her knowledge, reasoned that perhaps she was mistaken because there was no mention of such creatures in the original story. She wondered if she might have missed something important. A whisper arose in the audience, and one of the students asked in amazement if such an animal really existed. Lena joined the discussion, clearly puzzled by what she had heard. The principal tried to calm the audience by calling for silence. He then turned to Lima, asking if he had heard anything about such a creature. Lima looked concerned, not knowing what to say. Melissa's answer stunned Lime, making him blush with embarrassment and surprise. Melissa replied that the correct answer was a person, which caused quiet laughter in the audience. Bass seemed embarrassed as well, and he asked Melissa softly what her answer meant. Melissa only smiled and stated that such an explanation could only cause surprise. Melissa then decided to continue the game and suggested the next question. She asked, "Who leaves the most important reports at work at night and gets paid a meager salary for it?" The question caused the students to be even more surprised. They didn't understand what Melissa could have meant and waited impatiently for her answer. Melissa, savoring the moment, announced that the answer was again simple and obvious, smiling her enigmatic smile. The instructor offered to complete the test, noting that Melissa was automatically the team leader because of her quick wit and resourcefulness. She felt confident that she could keep Bass safe if things went wrong this time. Melissa was glad that her plan had worked and she would now be one step ahead of everyone else in her role as leader. She felt that it was the best way to keep the entire team safe. Bass suggested that they change the distribution of the teams. He confidently stated that he wanted to replace Melissa with someone else, clearly unhappy with the situation. The teacher turned to Lime, offering to join the team. Lime politely declined, stating that she preferred to be under Fortman's leadership. Surprised cheers erupted in the hall. Fortman, sensing that his plans were being ruined, grudgingly told Lima that he could not choose his own team and that the rules were the same for everyone. Lima insisted on his choice. Lime confidently replied that he was joining Fortman's team. Melissa, grinning, reminded Lime that although the protagonist didn't usually turn down assignments, things had gone a little wrong this time. Fortman, approaching Melissa, noted with interest that her answers were unexpectedly clever. He leaned closer, asking if she could answer him one question. Melissa felt slightly embarrassed. The situation was beginning to seem a little confusing to Melissa, and she decided it might be worth taking a step back and taking a pause. She thought it was supposed to be different in the original story. Fortman was still standing next to Melissa, waiting for her response. Melissa wondered how best to handle the situation. She was sure she could handle it if she made the right move. Melissa, deciding that action was necessary, exclaimed that she was willing to answer any question he was interested in. Fortman smiled as he offered her an answer to the riddle. Melissa realized that the situation was not in her favor and smiled back. She knew that Fortman intended to test her, and she was ready for it. The four sat together, and Bass shared his thoughts about Melissa with the others, claiming that he and Melissa were on the same team. To that, Melissa, a little aloofly, reminded him that three people couldn't be on the same team. Bass looked disappointed. He couldn't understand why the protagonist was back with another guy and not him. The situation was clearly discouraging him and he was losing confidence. The girl sitting next to him tilted her head slightly and motioned for everyone to gather and move on to their training. She seemed calm, her face expressing determination and focus. Melissa stood next to Lima and Fortman, looking at them. She sensed that something unusual was going on between the two of them, perhaps related to their pasts or hidden agendas. Bass thought with worry on his face that maybe Lena had something to do with what had happened with Melissa. He realized that their relationship clearly had deep roots. The appearance of the mysterious man in the background suggested that perhaps Lime was playing a more important role than it seemed. He held Melissa's hand, their interaction looking all too familiar. The instructor urged all the participants to pack up and head for the mountains, not wasting time talking. He wanted everyone to be ready for the ordeal. Fortman asked Melissa with a smile if she had remembered to bring everything she needed. He assured her that she could feel safe in their pairing. Melissa, slightly embarrassed, thanked him for his concern. Fortman continued to flirt with Melissa, telling her that she was special and that he couldn't lose her. Meanwhile, Lime was watching them, clearly jealous. Lena, looking over Melissa and Fortman, questioned if she really needed that kind of security. His voice was full of irony. Melissa tried to calm him down, telling him not to get worked up. The teacher waved his hand, telling everyone that it was time to head to the mountains to collect rare materials. It was a moment when discipline and determination came first. Fortman again expressed his concern for Melissa's safety, assuring her that he would be there for her. Melissa looked at him, remaining calm but with a slight smile on her lips. The scene shifted to the forest where Lime and Bass were discussing plans for the day. Lime chided Bass for his lack of initiative, pointing out that it would be difficult to succeed on their team. Melissa stood slightly off to the side, watching the discussion. She realized that she would face challenges on this team, but she was prepared for them. Bass pondered what Melissa was doing. He noted that her behavior had become odd since she had been put on the same team as Fortman. Bass held the strange rock in his hands, examining it. Lillian stood next to Bass, looking at the beautiful mushrooms. She admired their appearance, saying they looked amazing. When she reached for a mushroom, Bass quickly stopped her, warning her not to touch it. He said the mushrooms could be poisonous and pose a danger. Squatting down next to the mushrooms, Lena asked if they had poison. Bass only shrugged as if this fact was unknown to her. Bass mentally imagined using the mushrooms to create potions that could cloud the mind and cause seduction. His fantasies took him into a world of dark thoughts and secret desires. In his thoughts, he recalled himself with Melissa. She felt like a conqueror, ready to capture his attention at any cost. Back to reality, Bass stopped abruptly, realizing that these mushrooms might not be so good. He decided not to take any chances and leave them alone. Lena looked at Bass in surprise. She didn't understand his sudden change in behavior, but decided not to ask unnecessary questions. Sudden thunder rumbled in the clear sky, causing Bass to startle. Lillian noticed that the thunderstorm was approaching and suggested they go down the mountain to avoid the rain. For agreed with Lillian, saying that safety was more important than anything else. He suggested that everyone stop what they were doing and descend immediately. Bass disagreed with the decision, saying that he still needed to find the necessary materials. He insisted on staying. therefore, as leader of the group, insisted, instructing Base to follow his orders. Base reluctantly complied and agreed to go down with the others. Base looked anxiously at the dark sky, noticing that the rain was already beginning to fall. His uneasiness increased. Half a day later, the rain had not stopped. Base began to worry that he wouldn't be able to get down the mountain in time. The moment the real thunderstorm began, Base realized that the situation had become serious. He realized that their group needed to seek shelter. Lillian asked Base where Melissa was. Base was unable to answer without knowing where she was. Base looked around and noticed other students standing in the rain. He decided that they needed to join forces and find Melissa. Realizing that the situation was getting dangerous, all the students started looking for Melissa so they could join forces and go down the mountain together. He suggested that everyone stick together and go forward. He pointed to a shelter up ahead where they could wait out the storm. Liren and Melissa, taking shelter from the rain, walked through the forest. Liren looked weakened, and Melissa helped him stay on his feet. Under the cover of the trees, she suggested that they gather and stay together to avoid trouble. She looked determined to protect everyone. Melissa grinned and assured Base that she wasn't easily intimidated. She was confident in her abilities and wasn't going to back down. Angry at Melissa's joke, but tried not to show his annoyance. He reminded her that they weren't just playing, but were in a dangerous situation. She moved closer to Liren, saying she was checking his temperature. He felt embarrassed, but continued to pretend that everything was under control. Melissa, smiling mockingly, told Liren that even his attractiveness didn't justify his actions. She suggested that he keep his hands to himself. With that, he exhaled and was relieved that they had finally found a safe place. He looked around to make sure the others were okay. Liren motioned for Melissa to step back as he felt better. He was annoyed by her control. In the darkness of the night, Melissa thought for the first time about the strength of the other girls. She realized that their team was at a disadvantage. She noticed that despite the strengths of their leaders, the girls on the team might be struggling because they lacked combat experience. Lime and the others looked at Melissa as she pondered how to adapt to the current situation. He suggested that Melissa put forward a plan of action. Liren supported Melissa, ready to follow her plan. He wanted to know what she would do next. Melissa was determined and confident. She realized that her life was at stake and she was going to fight to the end. Liren continued to watch Melissa carefully. He thought about why her behavior raised so many questions. He couldn't get enough of her confidence. Melissa looked around and realized that she needed to act quickly. She told the others that she was going to start a fire to keep warm. She took some twigs and tried to start a fire, but it was harder than expected. She kept her composure. Liren advised Melissa to take her time and be careful. He warned that it would not be easy to start a fire in this weather. Melissa decided to try her own way. She concentrated and cast a spell, creating a small flame in the palm of her hand. Melissa cheered as she saw her magic working. She successfully started a fire, warming everyone around her. Liren stood nearby, his clothes wet from the rain. He looked at the fire, savoring its warmth. Melissa felt proud of her success. Liren was stunned when he saw Melissa using her powers. He realized that her magic was much stronger than he had imagined. Melissa smiled slightly, savoring the moment. She realized that with her help, the group could survive this storm. At that moment, Base burst into the shelter, surprised and excited. He wanted to know what was going on here. Base entered the hideout, worried about Melissa. He saw her next to a man who was shirtless and accused Melissa of inappropriate behavior. Base didn't hide his outrage at seeing Melissa so close to another man. He thought to himself that Melissa probably attracted men at an incredible rate. Base turned around, stating that he didn't want to interfere with their activities. He was clearly annoyed and ready to walk away. Melissa, getting up, walked over to Base and tried to explain the situation. She was calm and confident that she could convince him that all was not as it seemed. Melissa talked about how she had nothing to hide and her actions shouldn't bother Base. She tried to be restrained despite his accusations. Base didn't know what to think and began to have doubts, but he still remained wary. He offered to give Melissa an explanation that would satisfy him. Melissa, in turn, suggested that everyone calm down and not dramatize the situation. She said that her actions were dictated by necessity. Base was still unsure of her words, but backed off, deciding not to interfere any further. He realized that Melissa was not as simple as she might seem. Melissa watched Base with interest, wondering if he still didn't trust her completely. Her face expressed a mixture of mockery and thoughtfulness. Base told Melissa that he wanted to be there to protect her, even if she didn't ask for it. His concern was obvious, despite all the misunderstandings. Melissa and Base relaxed a little and their dialogue became less tense. He reminded her that there were other people around to trust. The situation became a little easier to deal with when Melissa noticed that Base was still willing to help and protect her. She realized that his suspicions were motivated by concern. Base jokingly said that he wasn't going to leave Melissa alone and moved closer to discuss their future plans. Melissa smiled and joked that he should watch his emotions. She realized that despite his strictness, he was always there for her. Base was still trying to figure out how to be with Melissa and pondered his feelings. He enjoyed spending time around her despite the constant fighting. Melissa hugged Base and thanked him for his concern. Her actions showed that she actually appreciated his support. Melissa asked Base how much longer they would be hiding from the rain and if they could go back to the others soon. Her voice was calm. Base sighed and promised that they would find a way out of this situation. He was willing to help Melissa in any endeavor no matter what. Melissa watched Base and felt a spark ignite between them. She realized that this was only the beginning of their journey together. The situation had gotten heated, but they both decided it was best to stay together. After all, they always have each other. Melissa jokingly remarked that if Base and their other classmates came back to them, it would be embarrassing for her to be in that position, especially in front of the rector. Melissa questioned Base as to why he took his shirt off in the first place, as if it was some kind of ritual. She began to tease him, suggesting that he might be claiming to be her lover. Base, who kept a serious expression on his face, reflected on how their relationship still seemed special to him despite the differences between them. Melissa, noticing his seriousness, decided to play a joke on him and suggested that he perform the ritual they had just discussed, though she noted that it wouldn't be the best place in the woods. Base agreed with a smile, stating that he would be happy to have such a ritual. He seemed pleased, though Melissa remained a little tense. When Base offered to hug Melissa in front of everyone, she was stunned and indignant, thinking about how uncomfortable she would be in such a situation. Base insisted on his offer with a sly smile, clearly enjoying the moment and trying to tease Melissa a little. Melissa tried to explain that she wasn't ready for such close contact in front of everyone, but Base interrupted her, insisting on her own way. Melissa began to give in to her emotions as she pondered his words, and at one point even wondered how serious he was. Melissa looked at Base and suggested that they just hug now, no more words or rituals. She felt her heart begin to beat harder. Base gladly accepted her offer, noticing that his heart was literally bursting with emotion for Melissa. Melissa, on the other hand, tried to assure herself that there were no other men in her heart but Base, but her thoughts were confused and she didn't know if she should fully trust the feeling. Base asked Melissa, with slight irony, if she was jealous of him and why she talked about her relationship with him so often. He was clearly trying to get her emotional. Melissa, feeling the situation spinning out of control, thought to herself that she couldn't take it anymore. Her inner voice was already starting to rebel. She decided not to tell him the truth, noting that his world was just a fictional story, while she herself was just a character brought here by the author. Melissa tried to convince Base that her relationship with the rector was perfectly normal, but she herself wasn't sure it would help. The thought flashed through her mind that Base might not be angry enough yet to stop her attempts. But she wouldn't give up. Base, tired of not telling her, asked Melissa to help him remove the rest of his clothes so he could warm up and relax. Melissa, though not expecting this turn, decided that something had to be done, but she herself didn't know how to proceed. She decided to just follow the situation. Base stated with determination in his voice that he wasn't going to back down and would continue his attempts to get all the answers from her. He was determined and wanted to find out everything to the end, for that was the only way he could feel satisfied. Melissa abruptly stopped Base, ordering him not to come any closer. She explained that if the rector showed up, he would misunderstand everything. Base looked pensive, as if contemplating what the future held for him. Melissa noted with a sad smile that she always knew she couldn't stay with him. She reminded him that their meeting had been an accident, and her duty was already done. She stood her ground resolutely, despite her inner turmoil. Base gently took her hands in his, telling her that he wasn't ready to just let her go. He wanted her to stay close to him because she was important to him. Melissa seemed touched by his words at that moment. Melissa wondered if he might be able to sincerely change her mind. She hoped that he could prove his loyalty and that their bond would remain unbreakable. Base showed Melissa his tattoos symbolizing his affection. He said that the mark reminded him of her and their promises to each other. Melissa was amazed and wondered how deep his feelings were. Melissa admitted to herself that it could all be sincere, for Base looked determined and serious. She felt that his words made her heart beat harder. Base confidently assured her that their promises would remain unbreakable. He went on to talk about his love for her, noting that she would always be his muse, no matter what. Melissa reflected on the fact that promises could be strong, but there was still danger. She tried to figure out what actions to take to keep herself and those she cared about safe. Base had promised with firm conviction to protect her, no matter the risk. He was willing to do anything to keep their bond intact. His words sounded like an oath. Base mentioned that one day he would be strong enough to make all the dangers before them disappear. He wanted to assure Melissa that their future would be bright and happy. Melissa reminded Base that even then, they needed to be careful and stay vigilant. She suggested that he join her down the mountain for treatment and recovery. Base, despite his doubts, decided to trust Melissa and agreed to her suggestion. He realized that she could be trusted in such things and that he could follow her advice. Melissa assured him that they would do everything they could to preserve their bond and protect each other. She added that their promises would only matter if they walked that path together. Base expressed gratitude to Melissa for her support. He seemed reassured and at peace knowing that she was there for him and ready to help him. Melissa, smiling, advised Base not to worry because she would be there to help him through his difficulties. She expressed her willingness to support him in everything. When they returned to the team, Melissa was once again by Base and Vince's side. She insisted that they all head down the mountain together. Vince expressed concern about the state of the team. Base, jokingly noting that the team would be in dire straits without his presence, continued to follow beside Melissa and Vince anyway. It was important for him to feel their support. Melissa noticed Base hugging him and looking at her. He seemed absorbed in her presence, as if oblivious to everything around him. Base admitted that he was worried about them and wanted them to stay safe. He suggested that they follow his instructions and take care of each other. Melissa confirmed with a smile that her concern for Base was real. She reminded him that she had done everything she could to change his fate and protect him from danger. Base was touched by her words and readily agreed to her suggestions. He felt he could trust her intuition and follow her plan. Melissa called out to Base, insisting that he follow her. Base complied, saying that her word was law to him. Base pondered to himself that Melissa was the woman he really cared about. He was sure that she was the key to his happiness and safety. Base, as he watched Melissa, realized that even when he was around her, he didn't feel completely safe. His inner fears and doubts continued to plague him. Melissa tried to cheer Vince up by reminding him that they had only a short distance to go to the bottom of the mountain. She expressed concern for Vince's condition, hoping he could hold out. Base leaned over to Vince and told him that he was the reason Melissa had been able to get the highest score on the exam. He thought to himself that if he just slowed down and stayed a step behind, he could control the situation. Melissa assured everyone that her health was fine and she didn't feel any problems. She looked confident and calm despite the tension around her. Vince apologized to Melissa and said that there were more exams ahead of them, but he promised that he would do everything he could to make sure that she did well. Base remarked sarcastically that Vince wouldn't be able to keep his promises, and he advised him to keep his mouth shut. Base tried to pull away, insisting that he could walk on his own. Melissa cautioned Vince and told him not to argue. Suddenly she pointed at something and asked anxiously what the creature in front of them was. A small owl was lying on the ground in front of them, upside down. It looked frightened, as if it had just been through something terrible. Vince assumed it was a baby mountain owl that had probably fallen out of its nest and been caught by the wind. He looked at the little owl with sympathy. Melissa leaned over to the owl and tried to reassure it, telling it not to be afraid. She looked gentle and caring, showing her kindness to the little creature. The owl responded to Melissa's words, making quiet noises. This dispelled a little of the tension among the heroes and made them smile. Melissa offered to show the owl to her brother, hoping he could help. She took the bird in her arms and tried to calm him down by speaking softly to him. Base, looking at the situation, thought about the fact that this owl might be under some sort of curse. He suspected it was a magical influence. Vince anxiously asked Melissa if she was hurt, and Melissa replied that she was fine. She expressed surprise and wondered what the creature in front of them was. Melissa realized that the owl was emitting a strong and unpleasant odor. She realized that the owl was different from normal birds, which caused her concern. Melissa assumed it was an owl from the academy, known for its strong odor. She reminded everyone that such birds don't harm humans, but can be used to hunt magical creatures. Melissa was surprised to realize that such a creature was capable of harming a witch. She wondered how to deal with such an owl in battle and use its abilities. Base scrutinized the owl, pondering whether the creature was actually silver. He speculated that the owl might be a mixed breed containing silver elements. Base reminded everyone that witches protect their territories with light, which makes them immune to conventional weapons. He suggested that Melissa stay out of harm's way to avoid unnecessary injury. Melissa, grateful for his concern, leaned against Base, confirming that she was willing to follow his advice and be careful. Base suggested to Melissa that he could handle the wound care himself. He confidently took her hand, showing his determination to help. Melissa noticed that Base's hand was cold and expressed concern about it. She began to wonder if it had something to do with the curse that Base was carrying. Base clarified that the heart of the curse hadn't completely consumed him yet. He was glad to be able to help Melissa and ease her pain despite his own difficulties. Base noted to himself that he was in pain, but promised that he would definitely get used to it someday. He expressed confidence that he would be able to cope. Melissa and Base gently held the owl as they discussed its condition. Melissa warned the little creature to be more careful and not to be in danger in the future. Suddenly the owl came to life and began to move, much to everyone's surprise. Vince couldn't believe his eyes, wondering if the owl was really an ordinary bird. Base noticed that his wound was gone. He was amazed, not realizing how it had happened. The situation made him wonder about the owl's possible magical properties. Vince doubted aloud that it was indeed a baby mountain owl. He suspected that there was a rarer species of bird in front of them. Vince explained that it was probably a medicine swallow in front of them. He said that the young of this species look similar to mountain owls, which is why they are often confused. Melissa and Base were surprised to ask what a medicine swallow was. They were expecting a more detailed explanation about the properties of this bird. Vince continued, explaining that a medicine swallow is a magical bird with healing powers. He added that magical creatures often vary in their abilities, but healing is one of the rarest. Vince marveled that they had managed to encounter such a rare creature in these parts. He wondered how valuable it was to have a medicine swallow as an ally. Perhaps this wasn't the worst turn of events for them. Melissa noticed that the owl weighed more than she expected. She struggled to hold it in her hands, realizing that the owl's strength was not so small. Vince urged to grab the owl faster, realizing its value. He realized that the owl could be useful in the fight against their enemies, for he thought the ability to heal wounds could change the course of the battle. Melissa, Base, and Vince stood together, discussing the situation. Vince didn't believe the owl could change the outcome of the battle. Melissa and Base didn't share his pessimism. They hoped to use the owl's abilities for good. Vince looked at Melissa and asked her if she was serious about taking risks for the owl. Melissa replied confidently that she thought he was the key to victory, so she was willing to take the risk. The owl looked sleepy as Melissa and Vince continued to discuss its fate. Vince was certain that the owl was here because of Melissa, and if it died, it would be her fault, too. Melissa calmly countered that the owl belonged to Base, since he'd found it first. She wasn't going to give it to Vince and insisted that the owl belonged to their team. Vince challengingly pointed out that Base couldn't have done it on his own if it hadn't been for Melissa's support. His words carried a sarcastic tone, as if he wanted to embarrass Base. Melissa contradicted Vince, saying she didn't agree with his opinion. She saw the owl as not only healing, but also an opportunity for protection, and so she insisted on her decision. Base listened to the argument quietly, knowing that despite Vince's words, his intentions remained unchanged. He was sure he would continue to protect the team, even if it cost him dearly. Melissa gently cradled the owl to her chest, telling him that she couldn't return it to the academy for fear that someone else might discover it and take advantage of it. Vince remarked in an apologetic tone that every life was equally valuable. Melissa only coldly replied that she couldn't do that. Base felt that the atmosphere around Melissa was becoming more and more mysterious, as if she really was the witch everyone was talking about. He was beginning to doubt that he truly knew her. Meanwhile, the owl turned back to them, as if he wanted to make sure everything was all right. Suddenly a little boy appeared and announced that he liked Melissa. He happily said he wanted her to be his mom. The tall man who accompanied the boy agreed with his words with a smile, adding that if he so chose, they would go to the academy together.